Chapter 1485. It recognized her as its master? Hearing these words, almost everyone present lost their composure. What did you say? The heavenly square cauldron has recognized you? A man who looked to be in his 30s couldn't help but blurt out. Chu Luiyue nodded. Doesn't the heavenly square cauldron recognize its master every time it appears? Under normal circumstances, treasures like the heavenly square cauldron would find their own owners. If one could gain its recognition, he or she would naturally become its master. If not, no matter how hard one tried, it would be in vain. Everyone was speechless. They were so focused on finding the heavenly square cauldron that they had forgotten about this. Recognized its master, it had recognized its master. Why were they still working so hard? Wait. You said that you obtained the heavenly square cauldron a few years ago. Do you have any evidence? Another person asked suspiciously. Who knows if you found this treasure in the mysterious canyon? Chu Luiyue laughed. Why would I lie about this? To be honest, the heavenly square cauldron is the main reason why I can contract with two divine beasts. If you don't believe me, I can't do anything about it. Everyone was stunned. They almost forgot that Shangguan did contract with two divine beasts. One was a crimson gold heavenly phoenix and the other was a three-eyed legendary eagle. Moreover, they were the eagle lords. At first, they found it strange as well. These two divine beasts shouldn't contract with the same person at the same time. If she had the heavenly square cauldron, it would make sense. It was a sacred artifact after all. Then, many people looked at each other and didn't know where to start. At this moment, Jean D finally calmed down and asked while panting. Since the heavenly square cauldron has been with you for a long time, you must have known from the beginning that the news about the eldritch northern region was fake. Everyone's hearts trembled. Chu Luiyue nodded calmly. That's right. Even the elders of the academy couldn't sit still after hearing her words. This girl knew it all along? Then so at that time, I planned to go with everyone from the academy to see what was going on. At this point, there was no need to hide many things anymore. Chu Luiyue decided to lay his cards on the table. It's a pity that I fell sick at the last minute and stayed in the academy. I couldn't go with them. Fortunately, something happened in the northern region of the untainted land, so I had a second chance to go there. And that time, I did go. The elders who traveled with me in the academy can attest to this. Elder Huafeng quickly nodded. Not bad, not bad. At that time, I didn't agree, but this girl was very insistent, so I took her with me. At that time, he only thought that she was young and impetuous and curious. Who would have thought that there were so many twists and turns in her story? Chu Luiyue smiled gratefully at Elder Huafeng. Elder Huafeng shook his head and quickly turned his head away, grabbing the armrest beside him. This was too similar. He rubbed the space between his eyebrows and kept reminding himself. Two people. There were two of them. Chu Luiyue didn't notice the conflict in Elder Huafeng's heart. She looked at the crowd with an open mind. At that time, I wanted to go to the northern region of the untainted land and investigate before making a decision. However, I didn't expect what happened after that. The man in his 30s who couldn't hold back his impulse to speak at the beginning couldn't help but shout. You didn't expect it? Do you think you can send us away so easily with just a few words? Shangguan, do you know that if you had said so earlier, so many people wouldn't have died? Chu Luiyue's expression was cold, and her gaze was like a knife. Do you mean that you want me to be responsible for the deaths of those people? At the very least, you have to bear half of the responsibility, right? The other party was obviously more agitated. If you had said so earlier, we wouldn't have ended up like this. Heh. Chu Luiyue suddenly laughed. Forgive me for not agreeing with your words. Her gaze swept across everyone like a sharp sword that had been tempered by ice. It pierced straight to the bottom of their hearts. You went to the northern region of the untainted land just to snatch the supreme treasure. This matter doesn't seem to have anything to do with me, right? What did their lives have to do with her? Besides, even if I had said so at that time, would you have believed me? Her clear and indifferent rhetorical question left those people speechless. They indeed wouldn't believe the words of an ordinary student of Lingxiao College. Moreover, it was related to the heavenly square cauldron. Such a supreme treasure in the hands of a teenager. Just thinking about it made them feel that it was a fantasy. Why would anyone listen to her? Chu Luiyue tucked the stray hair on her cheek behind her ear, shrugged, and chuckled. Everyone should know the principle of alerting the enemy better than I do, right? Did they want her to put herself in danger for some irrelevant people? Even they wouldn't do that themselves. From the beginning to the end, the only people I wanted to save were the people of Lingxiao College. The lives of others have nothing to do with me. Her words were loud and clear. It sounded so resolute, but it was understandable. Everyone was speechless for a moment. Suddenly, someone spoke in a cold voice. You said that you have nothing to do with the Black Demon Cave and that the Heavenly Square Cauldron had recognized you as its master a few years ago. How could it be so coincidental that among so many people, only you successfully entered the mysterious area in the canyon? Shangguanyu, do you really not have any secrets that you can't tell others? Chu Luiyue looked in the direction of the voice. It was a man who looked about 40 years old. His face was ordinary, and his eyes were cold. Just as Chu Luiyue was about to speak, she suddenly heard loud laughter from the distant horizon. The laughter was as loud as thunder. She is a descendant of the Shengguan clan. Naturally, only she can enter my territory. This voice was vast and ethereal, but it was incomparably clear when it entered their ears. Everyone was shocked and turned to look in unison. Chu Liuyue's heart also skipped a beat. She looked in the direction of the voice. A tall and burly figure was rapidly approaching from the sky. He was dressed in a long black robe, and he walked 1,000 miles in a single step. Today, I am here. I want to see who dares to bully her. Impressive pressure. Astonishing state of mind. Digression. Tomorrow 12:00 mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1486. A Venerable God Expert. Elder Bo Yen stood up abruptly and looked at the person who had just arrived. The other party's aura was tyrannical and oppressive. He was definitely an expert among experts. He turned his gaze and looked at Chu Luiyue. Chu, lass, who is that? That man said, descendant of the Shengguan family. Wasn't he referring to Shengguanyu? Didn't they say that this girl was an outsider? How did she have such a powerful helper? Many people pricked up their ears. Chu Luiyue looked at the middle-aged man who was striding over from the horizon. Her heart was strong and intense as it kept beating. Bang bang. Bang bang. Great. Great ancestor. She muttered softly. Her eyes were filled with disbelief and unconcealable joy. Rong Xiu sensed her emotional fluctuations. His gaze turned slightly and a hint of a smile flashed across his eyes. I didn't expect this person to come so quickly. In the blink of an eye, Taizu's figure was already in front of her. His robes fluttered in the wind. He walked step by step in front of Chu Luiyue and looked at her with a smile. Chu Luiyue looked at him in a daze. For a moment, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Taizu's figure and appearance hadn't changed much. It was just that the translucent soul in the past had now become a corporeal body. His brows and expression were so familiar and intimate. Taizu bent down slightly and looked straight at Chu Luiyue. Why? It's only been a while since we last met. Don't you recognize me? Chu Luiyue was still in a daze. Taizu? She really didn't expect that the person who appeared would be Taizu. Back in the northern region of the primordial desolate land, she vaguely guessed that Taizu should have been there. Later on, she also knew that it should be Taizu's tomb. There, she also thought that Taizu might be able to come back to life. But, she never expected that it would actually be true. Furthermore, Taizu's strength seemed to be extremely powerful. Taizu looked at Chu Luiyue, who was rarely at a loss, and could not help but laugh. He reached out his big hand and rubbed her head. Ha ha ha. Was this girl really that stupid? Wasn't she happy that Taizu was here? Everyone was shocked. Taizu? Is this man a Taizu from Shangguanyu? However, it seemed that he had never heard of an expert with the surname Shangguan in the Divine Ruins world. If there was no way they wouldn't know. Many people looked at each other, but it was obvious that they did not know much about this middle-aged man who had suddenly appeared. However, his appearance caused the crowd to feel a bit of fear. Not only did Shanghai you have the support of Lingxiao College and Yintian Tower, but they also had a god-level master. Moreover, judging from his aura, he could practically crush most of the people present. If this person was really a Taizu from Shangguanyu, then they were connected by blood and would definitely protect each other to the end. That would be even more troublesome. Taizu patted her head lightly again and said word by word, "Don't worry. With Taizu here today, no one will be able to bully you." Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a lump in her throat as she looked at Taizu's kind and doting smile. She had always been tough and never admitted defeat. Even when she was surrounded by so many people and was being pressured step by step, she still did not show any signs of weakness. Because she knew that she could not. At a time like this, if she showed any signs of weakness, these people would become even more aggressive. Therefore, she had to be tough. However, at this moment, the great ancestor's faint words suddenly and easily pierced through her barrier. In an instant, she felt wronged, sad, longing, and happy. Countless complicated emotions surged in his heart. Taizu's heart clenched when he saw that her eyes were red. All right. It's all Taizu's fault. We came too late. Our Yu has been wronged, right? He wanted to help Chu Luiyue wipe the tears in her eyes, but he didn't know what to do. He was at a loss. He had been all-powerful for several years. In terms of fighting and killing, he was the best at it. However, his daughter was crying. He really didn't know what to do. Therefore, he could only stand there and worry. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but laugh out loud. She reached out and tugged at his sleeve. Taizu, don't worry. I'm just too happy to see you. Taizu saw that she was smiling again. Her eyes were bright and bright. Only then did he feel relieved. Chu Luiyue sized him up from head to toe. She was still a little confused. How did you come out? This question was tactful. In fact, Taizu was only a soul back then, and it wasn't complete. Chu Luiyue had always thought that only by helping Taizu reconstruct his body and finding the remaining incomplete soul could she completely revive Taizu. But now, the great ancestor gently knocked on her forehead and smiled. Lass, have you forgotten that that place is our territory? Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment. Their territory. Was he talking about Taizu's graveyard? Suddenly, a white light flashed through her mind. If the great ancestor appeared like this, didn't it prove that his remaining soul was originally buried in the tomb, as well as, her gaze immediately fell on Taizu's body. There were a few shallow scars on the great ancestor's face and hands. They seemed to be old injuries. If it was a reconstructed body, there naturally wouldn't be such scars. This was Taizu's original body. Could it be that what was sealed in the graveyard was Taizu's body from 1,000 years ago? As if seeing through her thoughts, Taizu blinked. Chu Luiyue instantly understood and swallowed the words that were at the tip of her tongue. However, her heart was still surging with waves and couldn't calm down for a long time. Let's talk about these family matters in detail later. Taizu, I'll help you solve these small problems first. Taizu said with a smile, then turned around and looked at everyone present. Finally, his gaze fixed on the man in his 40s who had questioned Chu Luiyue just now. The smile on his face faded a lot, and his gaze was like a knife that scraped across the man's body, as if he wanted to directly use a knife to kill the man. Sensing the faint pain in his body, the man was a little scared and his eyes unconsciously avoided looking at Taizu. Taizu suddenly asked. Just now, were you the one who forced our Yu? His voice was no longer as gentle as when he spoke to Chu Luiyue. It was as cold as frost. Every word seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 caddies as it came crashing down heavily. The man's heart trembled. From the moment this person appeared, he knew that this person was not to be trifled with. I was just asking about some things. I didn't mean to force her. Everyone is here and can testify for me. When Taizu heard this, the corners of his mouth twitched without a smile. Oh. Is that so? Cold sweat broke out on the man's back. He had seen a lot of big scenes. If the other party wasn't too strong, he wouldn't be like this. Of course it's true. The reason why I asked that was to give her a chance to clear her name. Bang. Before he could finish his sentence, Taizu suddenly raised his hand. A bluish-black force suddenly flew out. The man's body was immediately sent flying and then fell heavily to the ground. Taizu sneered. Who do you think you are? How dare you interrogate you, Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1487. The surroundings instantly became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone was stupefied by this sudden scene. He attacked. He attacked just like that. Wasn't he too direct? This man was also from a first-rate family. Although he was a little desolate now and couldn't be compared to the Yuntian Tower and the Meteor sect, he still had the reputation of a first-rate family. Everyone more or less gave him some face. Who knew that this man who suddenly appeared would actually start a fight without a word? You. The man who was beaten was obviously stunned. He coughed a few times and spat out a few broken teeth. They mixed with the dark red blood and looked very miserable. Master. When the few people who followed the man saw the scene, they hurriedly rushed over and helped him up. Master, are you all right? Yi Lingran couldn't wait to kick these blind people to death. Did he look like he was fine? But now, if these people didn't stand by the side to support him, he was afraid that he wouldn't even be able to stand properly. That attack just now came too suddenly and caught him off guard. And it was extremely strong. It was extremely ruthless. Half of his face was numb now. Every part of his body seemed to have been ruthlessly crushed by something. It was extremely painful. Every time he breathed, there was a piercing pain in his chest and abdomen. His bones were probably broken and his internal organs were ruptured. He pointed at Taizu with a trembling hand. However, when he met that pair of cold and indifferent eyes, his heart couldn't help but tremble. He curled his finger and retracted it. However, the anger on his face was still obvious. You launched a sneak attack without a word. Isn't that too much? Taizu simply laughed out loud. What? Sneak attack? Of course it's a sneak attack. The man panted heavily. His face was red and white. Everyone was fine at first. You suddenly attacked. Naturally, it's considered a sneak attack. Sir, even if Shangguan Yu is your family and you want to protect him, you can't do this. You're really going too far. Taizu narrowed his eyes and snorted. When this sovereign made his move, everyone present clearly saw it. Anne. I was standing right in front of you. You couldn't even see that. Are you blind? Yi Lingran never would have thought that not only was this person's strength formidable, his skin was also as thick as a city wall. He spat out a mouthful of blood, his heart filled with hatred. Being beaten to such a state in front of so many people, he had completely lost all his face. There are so many people here. Everyone has been talking nicely since the beginning. No one dared to make a move. And you, that's your business. What does it have to do with me? Taizu interrupted him impatiently, then raised his eyebrows and looked around. His gaze was as cold as a knife. It's true that you didn't directly take action against you, but which one of you didn't bully her? You are all from first-rate families and clans. No matter how you look at it, you are all people with reputations. But, in the end, you actually joined hands to interrogate a teenage girl. Even if you don't feel ashamed, I feel ashamed for you. This sentence successfully caused the expressions of many people present to change. However, he couldn't say anything to refute. Taizu coldly glanced at Yi Lingran. If you don't have the strength, then don't come out and make a fuss. How shameful. Yi Lingran's chest tightened. His vision turned black, and he almost fainted on the ground. You. Who are you? How dare you be so arrogant here? He said these words with a strong appearance but a weak heart. No matter what the other party's identity was, his strength was obvious. If he made a move without saying anything again, Taizu sneered. You don't have the right to ask me this question. Yi Lingran swallowed a mouthful of blood. His face was pale, and his whole body trembled. Taizu didn't care. He turned his head and looked to the other side. Are you from the Golden Wing sect? Naturally, he was asking Jean D. Jean D's heart suddenly jumped when he was suddenly called out. He opened his mouth and felt a little weak. Yes, that's right. Just now, Yi Lingran was beaten up like this by this man. He didn't even have the strength to fight back. It was really terrifying. Now, this person was facing him again. It was impossible to say that he wasn't nervous. What do you want to do? Jean D clenched his fists. Taizu tilted his head and pondered for a moment. Then, he turned around and asked Chu Luiyue, last time in the northern region of the primordial desolate land, this thing has been making things difficult for you, right? Although he was still asleep at that time, he could vaguely feel what had happened inside and outside the canyon. Therefore, he remembered Jean D, and he had a deep impression of him. Hearing Taizu's words, Jean D suddenly felt that something was wrong. Could it be that this person had been targeting him since the northern region of the primordial desolate land? Then, it's him. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly, and then the corners of his mouth curved slightly. Senior Jean D has always been very concerned about my affairs. Jean D was shocked. Shengguan Yu. What nonsense are you talking about? Wasn't he deliberately making enemies for him? I'm not talking nonsense. Chu Luiyue looked innocent. From the scarlet cloud soared to the heavenly square cauldron, haven't you, or the Golden Wing sect, been very active and participating? Participating? I'm afraid you're just making trouble. Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly as he glanced at her. This girl became bold again when she saw Taizu. She was getting more and more skilled at tricking people. I was just, come here. Jean D wanted to defend himself, but before he could say anything, he heard the man ask him to go over. He swallowed hard. If you have something to say, just say it. He wouldn't go over. Wouldn't that be courting death? Just now, when he attacked Yi Lingran, all the people from the Golden Wing sect added together were probably no match for him. Then why would he go up and look for trouble? Taizu's expression faded a little, and his voice also turned cold. I said to ask you to come over. Didn't you hear me? Every word was full of oppression. As if a heavy hammer had hit his heart, Jean D only felt uncomfortable. He gritted his teeth. Actually, everyone just doesn't want to cause any misunderstandings. Haven't the previous misunderstandings already been resolved? Taizu was impatient to listen to his nonsense. He suddenly raised his hand. His fingers clenched. Swish. Jean D only felt a strong force attack him. The next moment, his body flew forward uncontrollably. The biting cold wind was like a knife, cutting across his face. Before he could react, his neck suddenly felt cold. Then, he tightened his grip. Ugh, Jean D let out a short cry of pain, and then he couldn't say anything. Taizu clamped his neck with one hand and asked coldly, Do you think I'm as stupid as you? Jean D wanted to speak, but he couldn't spit out a word. His face quickly turned red, and the veins on his forehead bulged. Only his body was struggling desperately. Unfortunately, Taizu was as steady as a rock, and his efforts were in vain. Taizu held him with one hand and looked around at the same time. Today, all of you listen carefully. All the inheritances in the canyon in the northern part of the primitive world belong to the Shangguan clan. If anyone wants to compete with you, they will end up like him. Click. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1488. The crisp sound of bones cracking could be heard. The great ancestor casually threw Jianghu's body and she fell to the ground softly. His eyes were bulging, his face was bruised, and his head was tilted to one side in a strange posture. There were a few bloodstains on his neck, and the dark red blood seemed to be about to burst out from under his skin. His eyes were unfocused, his expression was stagnant, and his breath was gone. He was obviously dead. The air in the huge square suddenly seemed to freeze. Everyone was shocked on the spot. What? What happened just now? This man actually killed Jianghu directly. The remaining people of the Golden Wing sect panicked when they saw this scene. Second Master. They wanted to rush over, but the corpse was right next to Taizu. They were full of fear and did not dare to approach. So they could only stand in the distance and watch anxiously and fearfully. One of them finally mustered up his courage and shouted, "Do you know who this is? This is the only brother of our Golden Wing sect master. Our sect master will not let today's matter go." What a coincidence. Taizu patted his hands lightly, as if he felt that his hands were stained with something dirty, and said with a faint smile, "It just so happens that I also feel that killing him alone is not enough." Everyone, listen to that. Was this something a human would say? Not only did he kill one, but he also felt that it was not enough. Could it be that he wanted to completely destroy the Golden Wing sect? As soon as these words came out, the faces of those followers turned pale as well. Taizu looked at them and smiled. "Don't worry, I won't kill you. After all, someone has to go back and report the death." Moreover, he felt that he would lose face if he personally killed these people. Everyone, Chu Luiyue was in awe of Taizu and silently gave him a thumbs up in his heart. Rong Xiu suddenly came over and lowered his voice. "So your temperament is inherited from your clan. Ordinary people really couldn't learn this ability to anger people to death without paying for it." His voice was low and pleasant, and there was a hint of a smile in it. Mixed with the scorching hot breath, it scattered on her slender neck, causing her to feel numb. She turned around and glared at him angrily. But now that she saw Taizu, her heart was filled with joy. Even this glance was exceptionally bright and dazzling. Ripples of light rippled, shaking people's hearts. Rong Xiu glanced at her delicate red earlobes and chuckled. "I like it very much." After he finished speaking, he was satisfied to see a touch of red spread to his porcelain-like cheeks. Only then did the man step back in satisfaction. His face was upright and his eyes were sharp. He was like a gentleman, incomparably handsome. It was as if he hadn't said those words. Chu Luiyue snorted. "With Taizu around, let's see if he can still be impudent." She retracted her gaze and glanced at Jianghu's corpse. The Golden Wing sect had gone too far. During this period of time, they had provoked her quite a few times. However, she didn't expect that before she could counterattack, Taizu would make a move. Moreover, it was so simple and crude. Needless to say, awesome. "Looks like you're really brave and insightful. You've made up your mind to completely break off relations with the Golden Wing sect?" Suddenly, a voice came from the crowd. The one who spoke was the man in his 30s who had questioned Chu Luiyue before. Compared to the other old foxes on the scene, he seemed to be a lot more impulsive. Could it be ignorant and fearless? At this time, he was frowning, and there was a bit of cold ridicule in his eyes. Obviously, he didn't think that Taizu alone could provoke the entire Golden Wing sect. Taizu glanced at him and suddenly laughed. "You should ask the Golden Wing sect about this. Their ancestors didn't dare to fall out with me. But when it came to them, they were very happy." Digression. This was a February that couldn't sleep until 3:00 o'clock. 6:00 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1489. The surrounding crowd fell silent. There was too much information in this sentence, and ordinary people couldn't react in time. Even Chu Luiyue was shocked and looked at Taizu in surprise. From what Taizu said, he had interacted with the people of the Golden Wing sect in the past. And the other party was very respectful and careful of him? Was it true? To be able to make the ancestors of the Golden Wing sect so afraid, how strong was Taizu back then? Her heart was pounding, but when she thought of the 9 canyons and several dragon skeletons in the north of the primordial world, she felt that it might not be impossible. The people on the other side were obviously frightened by Taizu's words. The man who spoke was quite confident, but when he saw Taizu's reaction, he immediately wavered. Who are you? There was no such person in the world of divine ruins, right? Even if he pushed it forward, there didn't seem to be anyone. The other party was indeed powerful. If he didn't have any background, he wouldn't dare to say this in front of so many people. Taizu put one hand behind his back and said calmly, "My real name is Shengguan Jing. However, you might be more familiar with my other name, Mu Tianjing." Mu Tianjing. I think I've heard this name before, someone in the crowd muttered softly. I think I've heard this name before too. I just can't remember it at the moment. Mu Tianjing. Mu Tianjing, many people frowned as they tried to recall. Chu Luiyue turned her head and glanced at Rongxiu. She had never heard of the name Taizu. She didn't know if Rongxiu knew anything about it. As if seeing through her thoughts, Rongxiu smiled and nodded. Chu Luiyue widened her eyes slightly, and then became even more curious. Taizu, Mu Tianjing. Mu Zun. Yao Bin murmured. Suddenly, a white light flashed in his mind. He looked at Taizu in shock and bewilderment. You're Mu Zun. You're still alive. He asked this question very carefully and cautiously. Many people looked over curiously. Mu Zun. What did he mean? Wait. Rumor had it that 1,000 years ago, an equipment refinement venerable had appeared out of nowhere in the divine ruins world. He was peerlessly powerful, and he had even challenged 7 equipment refinement venerables without losing. Could it be? Shi Ruier seemed to have suddenly thought of something. She widened her eyes in shock and looked at Taizu in disbelief. After a brief moment of silence, the crowd in the square burst into an uproar. So it was him. So it was him. In fact, they had more or less heard of this person. Because this person's experience was simply too legendary. Back then, he did not have any background and had roamed the divine ruins world alone. Arrogant to the extreme. However, this person was truly capable. Weapon refining venerables were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns in the entire divine ruins. As for him, he only went to find these people. To put it nicely, it was called sparring. To put it bluntly, it was called killing. It was said that the 7 weapon-crafting sovereigns were greatly affected by his repeated defeats. Some went into seclusion for 100 years and cultivated crazily. Some were full of admiration for him. They gave up their families and clans and said that they would follow him no matter what. The last one was the most miserable. Because of the blow, he directly became a monk. The reason was very simple. He realized that he had cultivated for 100 years, but he was not as good as the other party who had cultivated for 10 years. It was really a heavy blow. Moreover, at that time, these 7 matches were held consecutively within 3 months. It was almost a seamless match. After one match, the next one followed. That equipment refinement venerable was the 7th. He had thought that after the previous 6 matches, Mu Tianjing would definitely not be his match. He had never expected that he would lose so badly in the end. He couldn't think straight for a moment. From then on, he abandoned his cultivation and devoted himself to Buddhism. It was also because of this that those first-rate families and clans had formed a grudge with Mu Tianjing. Unfortunately, Mu Tianjing had already become famous at that time. There were many more people who wanted to ask him to help them refine equipment than there were people who wanted his life. Therefore, those people could only leave it unsettled in the end. Unexpectedly, not long after, Mu Tianjing suddenly disappeared. Many people tried their best to find him, but they still couldn't find any trace of him. Some people said that he was dead. Some people said that he had hidden his identity. In short, there were all kinds of guesses. With the passage of time, everyone gradually forgot about this matter. In 1,000 years, the world had changed. Things remained the same, but people had changed. If it weren't for this person's amazing achievements back then, no one would have remembered him now. Taizu stroked his beard. Why? Are you disappointed that I didn't die? No, no. We definitely didn't mean that. Yaobin reacted immediately and immediately denied it. Back then, the ancestors of the Yao family had been taught by you and have always been grateful. It's just that they couldn't repay you and have always felt guilty. I never thought that I would be able to see you today. Yaobin wiped the sweat off his forehead in fear and trepidation. What he said was true. The reason why he could remember Taizu's identity so quickly was indeed because the Yao family had interacted with Taizu before. Back then, Taizu had offended many families and clans, but his ability to refine equipment had helped more people. The Yao family was one of them. Taizu glanced at him, narrowed his eyes, and thought for a long time before saying, "Are you the descendant of Yao Qingxin?" Yaobin hurriedly said, "Yes." Junior Yaobin greets Mu Zun. As he spoke, he politely cupped his hands to Chu Luyue and said apologetically, "Miss Shengguan, I'm really sorry for offending you before." Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly and reminded him, "You, is now the princess of the Yuntian Tower. Patriarch Yao, you can just call her princess." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1490. Taizu suddenly turned around, narrowed his eyes, and looked meaningfully at Rong Xiu. The two men looked at each other. For a moment, there seemed to be sparks. "You, come here." Chu Luyue coughed softly and walked over. Taizu put a hand on her shoulder. "We are really a family. We don't like to use our real names when we are outside. Since it's a coincidence today, let me formally introduce her to everyone." He looked around, the corners of his lips raised, and his smile was proud. "This is my descendant, Shengguan Yu. She is also the most outstanding genius of my Shengguan family. She is the apple of my eye." Everyone heard it clearly. She was a member of the Shengguan family. Chu Luyue smiled helplessly. Taizu had been with her for a long time. He knew how Rong Xiu treated her, but he still wanted to do this. She didn't know that Taizu didn't say much in the past because he was only an incomplete soul at that time. There wasn't much he could help with. Other than protecting her by her side, he couldn't think of anything else. But it was different now. His divine body had awakened, and he had basically recovered his previous memories and strength. Yu, was no longer a lowly outsider. She was the bloodline that Shengguan Jing cared about the most. These people relied on their good backgrounds to criticize Yu, and force her step by step. Their Yu, was so good. How could they bully her at will? Taizu's voice was deep and powerful. "From today onwards, if anyone wants to bully our Yu, they have to ask for my permission first." Every word was sonorous and oppressive. Many people's hearts trembled. This Shengguan Jing wasn't an easy person to get along with. Although he was alone, but he was a venerable weapon refiner. Moreover, he was an abnormal existence who had once defeated 7 weapon refining venerables in a row. In the current Divine Ruins world, this kind of person was simply someone that every family crazily fought to curry favor with. Who would dare to be rude to them? Chu Liyue's heart warmed. Taizu was backing her up. She could clearly feel that the way the people around her looked at her was very different from before. Lingxiao College and Rong Xiu had indeed been helping her. But when Taizu made a move, it was different. Whether it was Lingxiao College or Rong Xiu, to a certain extent, she seemed to be dependent on them. But Taizu was her closest kin. In the divine ruins world, without background, you would always be inferior to others. But now, with Taizu here, she was no longer alone. With such a top-notch expert, he was her strongest backer. Now, what else do you want to continue interrogating you, Taizu asked slowly. Many people's expressions changed. What was the point of asking? You've already acted in such a domineering manner, what else do you want others to say? They did not want to end up like Jean D. Yi Ling ran quietly retreated, trying to hide his figure as much as possible. At this moment, he realized that the other party had already held back his strength when he attacked just now. Otherwise, he would have been beheaded by now. This Shangguan Jing and Shangguan Yu, these two people, were not to be trifled with. He must be crazy to rush to the front like that just now. Taizu glanced at him indifferently and then retracted his gaze. Killing a chicken to warn the monkeys was necessary, but he had to choose a good chicken. A low-level one would dirty his hands. After waiting for a moment, Taizu nodded in satisfaction. It seems that everyone has nothing else to ask. All that the misunderstandings have been explained clearly. Then, from now on, apologize to you, one by one. He raised his chin. Yi Lingren's body stiffened. Let's start with you. Digression, a useless February. I feel that I can't handle it. What I lack today will be made up in the next few days. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1491. Everyone was stunned. They thought that the matter would be over, but they didn't expect this to happen. They didn't ask any more questions. They had already taken a step back and chosen to compromise. Why was Shangguan Jing still unwilling to let them go? It was inappropriate for them to join forces to deal with Shangguan Yu, but that was also for everyone to clear up the matter. They didn't intend to make an example of a child like her. Besides, these people here were of high status. One by one, they lined up to apologize to a little girl. What was going on? Although this little girl was now the princess consort of Yuntian Tower and was also Shangguan Jing's favorite descendant, it was fine for them to apologize. How could they really do that? Shangguan Jing had already expected that they wouldn't agree. Hey, didn't you say that you would apologize to you, after the matter is investigated? Are you going back on your word now? Everyone looked at each other. It was just a casual remark. How could they take it seriously? It wasn't that Shangguan Jing didn't understand, but that he had made up his mind to help his baby save face. However, they really couldn't do that. What would happen if word got out? They didn't want to save face. After a moment of silence, Yao Bin took the initiative to step forward and speak. Senior Mu, Senior Shangguan, we were indeed in the wrong this time. And part of what happened just now was also related to me. Why don't I represent everyone and apologize to little Shangguan? Perhaps because he remembered Rong Xiu's reminder just now, he didn't say the words, Miss Shangguan, completely. After saying this, Yao Bin's back was already covered in cold sweat. A breeze blew, and it was cold. This, on one side was Yuntian Tower, and on the other side was Shangguan Jing. They couldn't afford to offend either of them. Shangguan Jing glanced at him indifferently. You, before he could say anything, Chu Luiyue suddenly tugged at his sleeve gently. Taizu. Hearing this, Taizu hurriedly turned his head. His originally dignified and cold face suddenly had a cheerful smile. What's wrong, you, The corners of everyone's mouth twitched when they saw how quickly his face changed. You can have double standards, but this is too much. When he turned his head, he saw two completely different faces. Chu Luiyue blinked. Taizu, I think Princess Yao's suggestion is pretty good. Yao Bin looked at Chu Luiyue gratefully as if he had been granted amnesty. He wasn't doing this for himself, but mainly because he didn't want to make the situation too tense. If today's matter could be resolved peacefully, it would naturally be for the best. If Shanghai Yu was willing to step in and mediate between the two parties, it would save everyone a lot of trouble. Taizu narrowed his eyes. Do you really think so? Chu Luiyue smiled. That's right. In fact, Princess Yao was right. Everyone was here today to investigate some things. As for me, I might have caused a lot of misunderstandings in the past. It's not a bad idea to use this opportunity to make things clear to everyone. The Taizu's eyes were filled with pity. But you've suffered too much this time. He would feel terrible if he didn't help prevent her anger. You had suffered a lot in the past. It wasn't easy for her to return to Tianling and take back everything that belonged to her. In the blink of an eye, she was surrounded and bullied by so many people in the world of God. If it were someone else, they might not be able to take it. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed. Her eyes reddened, but her smile was extremely bright. Don't I have you? There was also Rong Xiao and the academy. These people were actually on her side and had been helping her all this time. Taizu, I'm very happy that you're back. I don't feel bad about anything else. Instead of wasting time arguing with these people, it was better to chat with Taizu. Taizu looked at her, his heart aching. But in the end, he gently stroked her hair. Okay, I'll listen to you. Yi Lingran heaved a sigh of relief. His knees went weak and he almost fell to the ground. The attendant beside him hurriedly supported him. Taizu glanced at him and sneered. He felt annoyed just by looking at this kind of thing. The tense hearts of the others also relaxed a lot. Fortunately, things didn't get to the worst point. Yao took a deep breath, took a few steps forward, and bowed to Chu Luiyue with cupped fists. Shangguan Yu, we believed dazzling eye and made wild guesses. We misunderstood you and caused you a lot of trouble. We're really sorry. I, Yao Bin, would like to represent everyone here to solemnly say, I'm sorry. His tone was very sincere. On one hand, he felt that he had misunderstood Chu Luiyue. On the other hand, he wanted to repair his relationship with Shangguan Jing as much as possible. So, at this time, he was showing his utmost sincerity. Others might feel embarrassed, but in Yao Bin's opinion, an apology wasn't worth anything. It would be best if Shangguan Jing could let this matter go. Even if it couldn't for the time being, it was good to have a good start. Chu Luiyue smiled and returned the greeting. Princess Yao, you're too polite. These things were obviously planned by someone in the dark. What she really wanted to deal with was the mastermind, not this group of people who were used as tools. After hearing Chu Luiyue's reply, Yao Bin's heart finally relaxed a lot. Suddenly, Taizu, who was standing at the side, raised his eyebrows. That's it? Yao Bin quivered and hurriedly looked at Taizu's expression. After all, he was the princess of Ziguang County and had been in the Divine Ruins world for many years. He still had a discerning eye. He immediately understood Taizu's meaning. Oh. Yes. Also. Well, no matter what, we were in the wrong first this time. We're in the wrong. Just saying sorry is not enough to make up for the harm we've caused you. As he spoke, he took out a sandalwood box from the purple thumb ring on his hand. The box was only the size of a palm, but it was very exquisite and carefully carved. There was a faint layer of light around it. It was not an ordinary item. As he handed the sandalwood box to Chu Luiyue, he explained. This is the Blood Cloud Spirit Ginseng that I just got a while ago. It's a small token of my appreciation. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. Blood Cloud Spirit Ginseng. It was said that it could revive the dead and was very effective. It was also very gentle and did not have any side effects. This thing was extremely precious. Even the Medicine Wind Valley of Lingxiao College did not have it. If Jiang Ji1 had this thing just now, she might have been able to save half of her life. She looked at Taizu hesitantly. This. Princess Yao, you're too polite. Yao Bin pushed forward again. This is nothing. It's just a small thing. Hurry up and accept it. Otherwise, it means that you don't accept this apology. We won't feel at ease, right? Taizu nodded. It's their good intentions. Just accept it. Chu Luiyue reluctantly took it. I'm really sorry. Taizu raised his gaze and looked at the others who were watching. Suddenly, he smiled. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1492. A quarter of an hour later, Chu Luiyue touched his universe ring, which had been filled up a lot, and was satisfied. This feeling of receiving a gift for free, it couldn't be any better. Not only did he not need to return the gift, he didn't feel the slightest bit of burden. Seniors, you are so generous. Yue is really ashamed to accept it. Chu Luiyue sighed with emotion. Everyone gritted their teeth silently. Ashamed to accept it? Don't take it. But anyone with eyes could see that you were very happy when you were collecting them. Unfortunately, they couldn't say that. Using a gift to replace an apology was the most acceptable compromise at the moment. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was happy, Taizu's mood improved a lot, and he couldn't help but laugh. Yue, the people here today are all first-rate families and clans in the Divine Ruins world. What you have is nothing to them. Don't be so noisy all the time. Those who don't know will think that we are deliberately cheating them. Everyone vomited blood. Isn't this cheating them? Their families were rich, but the things they gave out were the treasures of the treasures. This was simply cutting off their flesh. But what could they do? Putting aside Shengguanyu, Shengguanjing had sharp eyes. He could tell whether the things given were good or bad, expensive or cheap with just a glance. At this time, who would dare to take the risk of offending him again and pass off shoddy goods as good ones? Therefore, no matter how much their hearts ached, they had to give away the treasures. So be it. As long as they could end today's matter. After a while, someone finally bid farewell and left. In any case, the doubts about Chu Luiyue had basically been explained or resolved today. There was no point in continuing to stay here. Among them, a portion of people, including Yao Bin, were still trying to curry favor with Taizu. If they could establish a relationship with a living weapon refining venerable, the benefits would be unimaginable. However, Taizu was obviously not interested in this and dismissed them with a few words. The only thing he cared about now was Chu Luiyue. How could he care about anything else? When Yao Bin and the others saw that their hopes were slim, they could only leave in disappointment. Shengguanjing obviously hadn't completely calmed down today, so it was normal for him to ignore them. Perhaps, it wouldn't be too late to think of a solution after some time. Soon, the crowd in the huge black and white square dispersed. The surroundings gradually became deserted, but it was also much quieter and more peaceful. Looking at the empty square, Chu Luiyue exhaled softly. It's finally over. He had experienced too many things in a single day. Previously, his mind had been in a tense state, so he didn't feel it. Now that he was suddenly free, a heavy sense of exhaustion swept over him. She was not a god, so of course she would be tired. Dealing with so many people at once, and all of them had extraordinary statuses, he naturally had to be more careful. All of this required a lot of mental energy and strength. Fortunately, everything was resolved smoothly. Furthermore, in the end, he even managed to make a huge profit. This made her a lot happier. Taizu. Just as Chu Luiyue opened his mouth, a familiar voice came from behind him. Senior Shengguan. Chu Luiyue turned around. Elder Bo Yen. Everyone from the academy had gathered together, and Elder Bo Yen stood at the front. He smiled and cupped his hands, bowing to Taizu. I've heard a lot about you. I didn't expect to have the chance to meet you in this lifetime. It's really an honor. From the outside, Taizu looked to be in his 30s or 40s, younger than Elder Bo Yen and the others. However, his seniority was the highest among the people present, and even Elder Bo Yen had to call him senior cleanly. Taizu smiled. This venerable one has been asleep for too long. The world outside has changed. During this period of time, I have to thank everyone for taking care of you, Previously, he had stayed with Chu Luiyue in Lingxiao College for a period of time. He knew that these people were sincerely good to Chu Luiyue, so his attitude towards them was much better than when he faced those people just now. Seeing him like this, Elder Bo Yan and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Based on the situation just now, they thought that this venerable one would be difficult to get along with. You're too polite. Chu. Shanghai Yu is a student of our Lingxiao College, so we naturally have to protect her. Also, this time, we didn't protect her well and caused her to be wronged. Elder Bo Yan sighed. Taizu frowned slightly, and the unhappiness in his heart dissipated. His might not blame the academy, but he was different. Was wronged, and he couldn't help but feel that Lingxiao College didn't do its duty. The reason why he didn't pursue the matter was because he knew that Lingxiao College was already doing its duty to an ordinary student. Moreover, Yu's relationship with the academy had always been good, and he didn't want to cause trouble because of this. It was good that Elder Bo Yan was willing to take the initiative to admit it. The expression in his eyes softened a lot. This venerable one knows that this matter was planned by someone behind the scenes. Elder Bo Yan, you don't have to blame yourself. Oh. Then do you know who that person is? Elder Bo Yan and the others were shocked. Taizu thought for a moment and shook his head. We only have some clues, but we haven't completely investigated it. Everyone was a little disappointed. Haha. It's good to have clues. As long as we investigate carefully, we will definitely be able to figure out what's going on. Elder Huafeng happily came out to smooth things over. Senior Shengguan, Bo Yan, since the matter is over, let's go back to the academy. Elder Wensi reminded from the side. It wasn't appropriate to stand here forever. Yes. Let's go back first. Too many things have happened today, and you, must be tired. When he said the two words, Elder Bo Yan paused for a moment, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. She roughly knew what Elder Bo Yan was thinking. Elder Bo Yan is right. Taizu, let's go back first. Chu Liyue smiled. Taizu nodded and patted her head. A wonderful show came to an end. When everyone returned to the academy, they were still filled with emotions when they thought of everything that had happened today. Originally, Elder Bo Yan and the others wanted to ask Chu Liyue something, but Taizu rejected them with the reason that she wanted to rest. Everyone could only give up and let Chu Liyue go back to rest. Taizu naturally followed Chu Liyue back to Mount Jiuheng. Rong Xiu followed the two to the door. Just as he was about to enter, Taizu turned around and gave him a meaningful look. Rong Xiu, the two of us have something to say. He was chasing him away. Ever since he became the son of Saint, Rong Xiu had never been rejected like this. However, the noble holy son seemed to have expected this. He immediately stopped in his tracks and smiled. Then I won't disturb you and you, If you have any instructions, just say it. With that, he really left. His gaze turned slightly, and his deep phoenix eyes paused on Chu Liuyue's face for a moment. Taizu snorted in his heart. It wasn't that easy to kidnap you, Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1493. Chu Liyue followed Taizu into the house. The door closed. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly, and a faint smile flashed across his thin crimson lips. Previously, he had only vaguely guessed this person's identity, but now it seemed that he was more, protecting you, But this was also good. With Taizu around, she should be much more at ease. Rong Xiu. Outside the barrier, Elder Wensi suddenly appeared and waved at him. Bo Yan is looking for you. Rong Xiu turned back to look at the tightly shut door and nodded slightly. He took a step forward and left with Elder Wensi. Donghuang Bell Tower. In the main hall. When Rong Xiu entered, he saw that the elders present today were all here. In addition, Mu Hongyu was also here. It seemed that she also wanted to ask about you, Rong Xiu's thoughts raced, but his expression remained unchanged. Elders, may I know why you've called me here? Elder Bo Yen looked at him and said lightly. Don't you know about your princess consort? Several pairs of eyes looked over. The atmosphere seemed to freeze for a moment. Rong Xiu's lips curled up slightly. I thought that you were planning to wait for you, to come over and ask her together. We want to, but Sheng Wanjing won't let her go. Elder Huafeng pinched the space between his eyebrows. Weren't you chased out too? Rong Xiu paused and slowly said, That's right. You naturally has a lot to say to Taizu when they meet. We have a long time in the future, so we're not in a hurry. Everyone, how could he compete with Taizu? He was really hopeless. Sit down and talk. Elder Bo Yen raised his hand. There are some things that you should explain clearly first. It's the same. When that girl comes over later, we'll pick some things and ask in detail. Know yourself and your enemy, and you will never be defeated. It was only today that they realized that they knew nothing about that girl. Of course, the main reason they were in such a hurry was that they wanted to confirm something immediately. Rong Xiu gently nodded. All right. Elders, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. After he said that, the people present didn't know what to say for a moment. After a moment of silence, Elder Wanjing nodded. Rong Xiu, Sheng Guanyu. Other than this name, do you have any other identities? As soon as these words came out, everyone's spirit instantly tensed up. Several pairs of eyes fell on Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu nodded. Yes. The atmosphere in the hall instantly changed. Really? Elder Bo Yen leaned forward and asked anxiously. What identity? Rong Xiu paused slightly. It's a long story, speak slowly. Explain it bit by bit. The elders were obviously very concerned about this matter. Mu Hongyu, who was standing at the side, widened her eyes slightly. Her mind was filled with doubts. Ever since she was called over, she felt that something was wrong. The elders seemed to be unusually concerned about Lu Yu. Everyone here was of high status. It didn't seem appropriate for her to be here. Then I'll start from the beginning. If there's anything missing, Mu Hongyu, you can fill in the gaps later. Rong Xiu said calmly. Oh. Okay. Mu Hongyu was taken aback when her name was suddenly called. She instinctively nodded. The elders' gazes swept past Mu Hongyu. The reason why they called her over was because they could tell that her relationship with Sheng Guanyu was not ordinary. Every bit of information they could get was important. Everyone quieted down and waited patiently. Rong Xiu pondered for a moment. Yu has another name, Chu Luiyue. Jianghu Mountain. Chu Luiyue and Taizu sat opposite each other. Taizu looked at her carefully and said with concern. Look at you. You're so tired that you've lost weight. Has it been very tiring recently? His words were heartwarming. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed as she shook her head. Thank you for your concern, Taizu. It's not tiring for you, Taizu's face was full of disapproval. Those people bullied you all the way to the entrance of Lingxiao College. How can you say it's not tiring? If it were someone else, I'm afraid that only someone as outstanding as you could deal with them. Courage, wisdom, and strength. None of them could be missing. Great ancestor, actually, this time, I got the Academy's help and invited them over. There have been a lot of rumors about me recently. That's why I wanted to solve all the problems in one go. Chu Luiyue briefly explained the ins and outs of the matter to Taizu. Taizu heaved a long sigh when he heard the story. After a long while, he said, It's all Taizu's fault for coming too late. If he had come earlier, Yu would not have suffered so much. She was alone, but she still had to put in so much effort to deal with so many people. Which one of them was easy to deal with? Chu Luiyue shook her head, her eyes shining. No, Taizu, your coming is the biggest surprise for me. You haven't told me what you are. Taizu knew that she had been wanting to ask this, so he didn't hide it. You guessed right. That place is indeed the tomb I prepared for myself. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Prepared, for herself? Back then, I left the Tianling dynasty and went to the Divine Ruins world. In the northern region of the primeval world, I accidentally obtained the inheritance of a certain expert and broke through to become a venerable artificer. At that time, I was frivolous. After breaking through, I chose to enter the world and challenged several venerables in a row without losing. Taizu's tone was very calm when he talked about these glorious deeds. His old eyes were calm and filled with vicissitudes of life, as if they could contain all things. Chu Luiyue was secretly shocked. What kind of strength was this? At that time, I enjoyed all the glory, so I naturally became more arrogant. Until Taizu paused. Until later, I met the Great Phoenix Dragon. The Great Phoenix Dragon? Chu Luiyue was suddenly stunned. I've heard some rumors before. It said that you fought with the Great Phoenix Dragon's dragon clan, but no one said that Taizu directly fought with the Great Phoenix Dragon. Taizu sneered. Those old things are very proud. If the world knows that they were defeated by me, wouldn't they lose all their face? That one sentence contained too much information. Chu Luiyue was shocked speechless. So the one who fought with Taizu back then was the Great Phoenix Dragon? Most importantly, the one who lost was the Great Phoenix Dragon. Before the battle, I knew that something was wrong, so I prepared a tomb in advance. Later on, it turned out that this decision was very correct. I used this method to protect my divine body. Taizu couldn't help but smile proudly. Actually, that rumor is half true. At that time, there were indeed 9 green, red, and white dragons that came to surround me, but other than that, there was also a Great Phoenix Dragon. However, they hid the existence of the Great Phoenix Dragon. After a bitter battle, I simply chose to die with those 9 dragons and suppress them. I won't come out for 1,000 years. Only that Great Phoenix Dragon took advantage of the chaos to escape. Chu Luiyue's emotions churned when he heard this, and he couldn't help but ask, Taizu, why did they treat you like this? If they were also ancient divine beasts, how could they do such a thing of using numbers to bully others? Taizu coughed. That's nothing, it's just that. I was planning to use the bones of a Great Phoenix Dragon to refine artifacts, but they found out. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1494. Chu Luiyue was speechless. It seemed that Rong Xiu was right. Some things were really passed down from generation to generation. Chu Luiyue felt that she was already very good at causing trouble, but compared to her ancestor, she paled in comparison and wasn't even worth mentioning. Using the Great Phoenix Dragon skeleton to refine a weapon. What was Taizu thinking? As if embarrassed by Chu Luiyue's stare, Taizu waved his hand and explained. Actually, I didn't do it on purpose. At that time, I just thought that the skeleton was not bad and that it might belong to some divine beast, but I didn't expect it to belong to the Great Phoenix Dragon race. If I had known, I wouldn't have done that. After all, the Great Phoenix Dragon race was one of the 2 great ancient divine beasts. No matter how arrogant he was, he shouldn't have courted death like that. Chu Luiyue glanced at him faintly. Taizu looked away guiltily. Actually, it's the skeleton you obtained in the Tianling God realm back then. The corner of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. You'd rather fight to the death with them than return it? After all, it was the skeleton of their race. This didn't seem too appropriate, especially now that she had contracted Dumpling and Ziqin. She more or less understood these things. These divine beast races valued the skeletons of their own race very much and had never allowed them to wander outside. Taizu was like that, no way. Actually, when I found out that it was the skeleton of the Great Phoenix Dragon race, I wanted to return it, but they didn't listen and wanted to take my life no matter what. What could I do? I could only fight them head-on. Chu Luiyue felt a headache coming on. At that time, there was really no other way. After thinking about it, I divided my soul into 3 parts. One part was hidden in the jade pendant, one part was hidden in the half-god realm, and secretly sent it back to the Tianling god realm. The last part was left in the divine body to fight with them. At that time, he didn't know if he could survive, so he could only choose this method. That was why his soul was scattered and his god domain was incomplete. Chu Luiyue heaved a heartfelt sigh. Taizu, your luck is truly extraordinary. He was actually able to survive in such a situation. The most important thing was that he could gather his soul, awaken his god body, and come back to life. This was truly heaven-defying. Taizu sighed. Actually, this is all thanks to you. If you hadn't entered the Tianling god realm, brought my soul to the divine ruins world, found that jade pendant, and arrived at the northern region of the primordial world. Even if I slept for another 10,000 years, it would be meaningless. They were connected by blood, and it was only by relying on the power of this bloodline that he finally woke up. At that time, he had no choice but to risk his life and gamble with his life. Fortunately, after 1,000 years, this bet was finally won. Chu Luiyue smiled. I've always been very lucky. In any case, it was great that Taizu was able to come back to life. Taizu smiled and nodded. Our is naturally the best. Don't worry, with Taizu around in the future, no one will dare to bully you. Chu Luiyue nodded seriously, his heart calm and at ease. Oh, right. Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something, and hesitation appeared on his face. Taizu, is the grudge between you and the great phoenix dragon considered settled? Now that you're awake, do they know? Taizu's smile suddenly froze. Chu Luiyue's heart sank, and a sense of uneasiness surged. Haha. Taizu smiled awkwardly. Although the 9 dragons are dead, the dragon race has an extremely strong perception of corpses. Now that I've woken up, the great phoenix dragon race should know, right? By the way, you've hidden that skeleton well. No one found it, right? Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. Boo. Maybe. Thousands of miles away. Divine Dragon Realm. Above the dark blue sea, a huge hemispherical golden barrier floated quietly, and its aura was shocking. Within the barrier, there were islands in picturesque disorder. The mountains on the island were continuous, and the trees were lush. Occasionally, dragons would fly across the sky, their scales flickering under the sunlight. Suddenly, a dragon's roar came from the island in the center. Roar. The sound shook the sky, and the aura was vast. For a moment, the dragons were in awe. They lowered their heads. Then, a purple gold light suddenly flew from the island. It shot straight into the sky. It's been 1,000 years, and he's still alive. This time, they must not let him go. Lingxiao College. Donghuang Bell Tower. That's it? Elder Bo Yen frowned and asked. Rong Xiu nodded and glanced at Mu Hongyu. Mu Hongyu immediately said, No, that's all. No, that's all I know, Yi Zichen replied. The room fell silent again. Hongyu, there's nothing for you to do here. Go back and rest first. Elder Bo Yen thought for a moment and said. Mu Hongyu knew that they still had something to say, so she immediately responded tactfully and turned to leave. After she left, the atmosphere in the room became even stranger. The few of them looked at Rong Xiu. So, Sheng Guanyu has nothing to do with you, Elder Huafeng stared at him as if he wanted to see through him. But, how do you explain that she can use the Xian formation left behind by the first dean? Rong Xiu lowered his eyes. I taught her that. Is it really such a coincidence? Elder Huafeng was full of doubts. The room fell into silence for a moment. Elder Wanjing suddenly said, Since that's the case, I have an idea. Let Shengguan Yu test the Qingyun roll again. This time, all 4 rolls will be tested. Digression: I'm going out today and might not be able to return home until very late, so I'll put it on tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1495. This method will work. Elder Bo Yen also expressed his agreement. Previously, Shanghai Yu had only tested the celestial physician list. Although they knew that she was talented in other aspects, they had never tested her before. It just so happens that she hasn't taken the test at the beginning of the month for a long time. This way, we can also see how strong she is now. A few months ago, when she first came to the academy, her strength in all aspects was still relatively average. But after this period of experience, her level had increased a lot, and it was time for her to take the test again. Rong Xiu pondered for a moment and nodded. Okay. Jianghu Mountain. When Chu Luiyue walked out of the room, she saw Elder Wensi waiting for her. Elder Wensi, why are you here? Chu Luiyue was a little surprised and immediately walked over. Elder Wensi glanced into the room. Chu Luiyue understood and smiled. Taizu is resting now. Are you looking for him? Elder Wensi quickly shook his head. No, I'm here for you. He waved at Chu Luiyue. Come out first. Chu Luiyue looked back hesitantly, then nodded in agreement. She opened the barrier and flew out. Elder Wensi, what's the matter? Elder Wensi rubbed his hands, feeling a little embarrassed. Actually, it's nothing important. We all feel that you have improved a lot during this period of time. If it's convenient for you, can you go and take the test of the Qingyun roll? Chu Luiyue was stunned. Don't misunderstand. We just want to see what level you have reached now. Also, it can let the other students in the academy follow your example and work harder. Elder Wensi quickly explained. Chu Luiyue stared at him for a while, and her mind turned quickly. She thought that she probably knew what Elder Wensi wanted to do with this trip. After a pause, she nodded with a smile. Okay. Then let's go now. Now? Elder Wensi was a little surprised. He looked inside again. Then Senior Shengguan. It's just a ranking test. It's not a big deal. The Taizu had come from afar and was a little tired. It was a good opportunity for him to rest. It just so happens that I also want to see what rank I can get on the list. Only then did Elder Wensi relax. Then, come with me. When Chu Luiyue arrived at Qingming Plaza, he saw that Elder Bo Yen and the rest were already there. Rong Xiu, who had been called over earlier, was also present. Perhaps it was because they had already specifically instructed that there were no extra people here. Chu Luiyue stepped forward with a calm expression and saluted the elders. Elder Bo Yen laughed. Lass, you're here. Did I disturb you and Senior Shengguan? Chu Luiyue smiled and shook his head. No, Taizu is resting. That's good. Elder Bo Yen nodded his head and immediately explained. Actually, this matter isn't that urgent. After all, you've just experienced a lot. Chu Luiyue blinked. There's nothing troublesome about the ranking test. Also, I'm a little curious, so I came. Seeing that Chu Luiyue's attitude was so upright and magnanimous, the elders were a little hesitant. Could it be, were they really wrong? Then let's not talk nonsense. Let's start. Elder Bo Yen thought for a while. Now that you're already at the middle stage of the 9th level, it's your biggest improvement. Why don't you try the ranking first? First? Chu Luiyue's sharp senses caught this word. She thought about it and immediately understood. So there was more than one ranking test. She smiled and walked to the front of the warrior ranking board without hesitation. The few elders turned their gazes over. Although their expressions were calm, the surging waves in their eyes showed that they were not so calm in their hearts. Chu Luiyue raised her hand and placed it on the black stone wall. Her hands seemed especially slender and white against the dark and deep stone wall. The two extreme colors intertwined and seemed to be fixed into a painting. Chu Luiyue held her breath. The few elders couldn't help but feel nervous. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue felt a gaze on her. She turned her head and looked at Rongxiu. His phoenix eyes were deep and unfathomable. With just a glance, it was as if one would be drawn into it, forgetting everything and choosing to sink into it. It's just a test. Don't be nervous. Just do your best. A light smile flashed across Rongxiu's lips as he asked gently. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat and she nodded. Then, she retracted her gaze and looked at the stone wall in front of her. In the next moment, she activated the force in her body and it surged out. Buzz. With a buzzing sound, the green cloud ranking appeared. On the black stone wall, countless streaks of light flickered and quickly condensed into names. The warrior ranking appeared. Almost at the same time, the dark area at the very top that had been deliberately covered up suddenly loosened. Crack. This movement was extremely small, as if something was trying to break out from inside. But from the outside, no abnormality could be seen. Therefore, Elder Bo Yen and the others did not notice this small movement. However, Chu Luiyue's palm was on the green cloud ranking. She could immediately detect any small change on it. She almost subconsciously wanted to raise her head to take a look. But this impulse only flashed past her heart. She remained calm and collected, concealing these emotions. Force continued to surge out. Crack, crack. The sound became more frequent, and it seemed to be louder than before. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be beating violently along with this sound. The elders looked at each other and saw the confusion and suspicion in each other's eyes. It's been a while, why hasn't Shangguan Yu's name appeared on it? Middle stage 9th stage was not considered high among the students of Lingxiao College. After all, the standard for their admission was to be a 9th stage warrior. An ordinary 9th stage warrior might not even be able to be the last in the ranking. But Shangguan Yu was different. Her combat power was obviously much stronger than cultivators of the same level. As long as she tested with all her strength, she would definitely be on the ranking. But now, why was there no movement? Elder Wanzheng looked at the top and frowned. There was once a name that shone brightly there. But now, only darkness was left. The other elders followed his gaze and looked over. Their expressions were different, and their gazes were complicated. Only Rongxiu looked indifferent and calm. It was as if he was not worried at all. Crack, crack, crack. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that something was trying to break out from the seal. And she was extremely familiar with that power. Her heart seemed to be tightly clenched by something. If this continued, she was afraid that, boom. A loud sound suddenly came from afar. This sound was deafening, and everyone was shocked to the point that they immediately turned around. Chu Luiyue was no exception. In the next moment, she suddenly widened her eyes in shock. Something happened on Thousand Wine Mountain. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1496. The person who shouted was Elder Bo Yen. He quickly flew into the air and looked in the direction of Thousand Wine Mountain with a shocked expression. The other elders also reacted immediately and followed one after another. It was no wonder that they had such a big reaction. Something unusual had really happened at Thousand Wine Mountain. Above the sky, layers of dark clouds rolled over and finally gathered above Thousand Wine Mountain, covering the sky and the sun. The wind whistled, and thunder rumbled. And that loud sound was the sound of thunder coming from the clouds. It was so powerful that it shook one's heart. Chu Luiyue looked at this scene and couldn't help but frown slightly. What's going on? Every mountain peak in the academy had been specially set up with enchantments. And Thousand Wine Mountains was especially special. Ever since Chu Luiyue caused trouble there, Elder Bo Yen and the others had specially strengthened the barrier outside the mountain. Compared to the other mountains, Thousand Wine Mountain's barrier was definitely top-notch. As a result, any movement on the Thousand Wine Mountain would be blocked by the barrier. From the outside, no one could detect any problems at all. Otherwise, when Chu Lua transferred the Dragon Abyss Sword's soul to Scarlet Heaven's sword at Thousand Wine Mountain, it would have already spread in the academy and caused an uproar. Yet now, the natural abnormal sign had actually managed to bypass the spirit formation. This scale and aura was much stronger than what she had seen in the past. Countless thoughts flashed through Chu Liuyue's mind, but she couldn't figure out a precise possibility. What's going on? This shocking commotion quickly attracted the attention of the entire academy. Countless figures flew out from the various mountains. Everyone looked in the direction of the terrifying commotion. What's going on? Why is there such a big commotion? Could it be that someone is about to break through? Look at that direction, it seems to be Thousand Wine Mountain. Could it be that an elder is refining a weapon? Refining weapons shouldn't be like this. Because they were worried that refining weapons would disturb everyone, the elders set up layers of barriers on the mountain over there. Under normal circumstances, this kind of situation wouldn't happen. I really don't know what's going on this time. But that's really the location of Thousand Wine Mountain, right? Did something happen to Mount Thousand Wine again? Everyone was talking about it. Not long ago, when the Thousand Wine Mountain was forcefully closed, they felt that something was wrong. Who would have thought that there would be such a huge commotion today? Elder Bo Yen stared at Thousand Wine Mountain with a heavy gaze. Why did this happen all of a sudden? They had checked it several times before, and there was no problem. Calculating the time, it shouldn't be now. His expression was cold and stern as he spoke in a deep voice. Wensi. Immediately summon the academy's elders and lead the students to gather at Qingming Plaza. Yes. Hua Feng, Wan Zheng, come with me. The two elders were clearly aware of the seriousness of the matter and nodded in silence. Elder Bo Yen took a step forward and turned back to take a look. Rong Xiu, protect her. Rong Xiu nodded. Elders, be careful. Elder Bo Yen and the others headed straight for Thousand Wine Mountain. The entire academy was in chaos. Chu Luyue put down his hand. The light on the warrior ranking quickly dissipated and returned to calmness. That frightening cracking sound no longer appeared. However, that familiar feeling lingered in her heart and could not be erased. Chu Luyue stared at the black stone wall and finally looked up. The name that was covered was still dark, and his appearance could not be seen. Chu Luyue pursed her lips and felt complicated. A large, dry, and warm hand suddenly reached over and held hers. Chu Luyue turned around. What are you thinking about? Rong Xiu asked. Chu Luyue pursed her lips. She could tell that Rong Xiu did not want the elders to know her identity. Thousand Wine Mountain, is related to you? Her voice was very low, as if it was about to dissipate with the wind. Rong Xiu shook his head and intertwined his fingers with hers. I don't know either. He did have a way to hide it from everyone, but before he could use it, something happened at Thousand Wine Mountain. He raised his gaze slightly and looked at the pressure and momentum that were still increasing. He quickly frowned. Then, he held Chu Liuyue's hand tightly and said in a low voice, Don't worry, I'm here. Chu Luyue was stunned, and then a white light flashed through her mind. Wait. Could it be that the incident at Thousand Wine Mountain had something to do with her? To a large extent, Dumpling was able to break through to the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix realm because of the spring at Thousand Wine Mountain. She was originally a little worried, but after Dumpling broke through, Thousand Wine Mountain was calm as usual. Everything was as usual, so she did not take this matter to heart. Now that she saw the abnormality at Thousand Wine Mountain, she suddenly remembered this. Countless thoughts flashed through her mind. Thousand Wine Mountain had a special status in Lingxiao College. Although the students often went there to play, they did not dare to act rashly. This was also one of the reasons why the elders let them go up without worry. However, after she came, she caused a ruckus there twice. It was obvious that the elders of the college were accumulating tianlei in the spring. Although she still didn't know what it was used for, the elders obviously wouldn't waste their time on it. And most of those tianlei had been devoured by Dumpling. Didn't that mean? She lifted her foot and was about to step forward. Rong Xiu pulled her back, looked at her calmly, and shook his head gently. Wait first. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat, but after hesitating for a moment, she finally chose to wait on the spot. If there really was any trouble, she could not absolve herself from the blame. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1497. More and more students and elders gathered at Qingming Square. Many of them had not realized what was going on and were still in a daze. However, many of them were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped when they saw Rong Xiu and Chu Luyue. They knew Rong Xiu, but who was the girl next to him? She looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. Her clothes were simple, but it did not hide her beauty. Her appearance could topple a city, and her grace was outstanding as well. Just by standing there, she seemed to have gathered all the light. Everything around him seemed to have become much dimmer. Except for Rong Xiu. Seeing the two tightly clasped hands and their intimate posture, almost everyone felt as if they had been hit in the head with a stick and were dumbfounded. Since when did Rong Xiu get so close to a girl? Moreover, why did this woman look so familiar? Chu Luyue and the others had just returned, and the elders had been wondering about her identity, so they did not pay attention to the school. The incident in Fang State City had not spread, so no one knew about it. Lu Yu. Mu Hongyu had just left the Donghuang Bell Tower when she was summoned by the elders. She immediately saw Rong Xiu and Chu Luyue standing in the middle. She had no choice. She stood out from the crowd and was too eye-catching. Chu Luyue was pulled back from her thoughts by the crisp sound. She looked up and saw Mu Hongyu. She waved at her. The surrounding people subconsciously made way for her. Mu Hongyu walked over quickly without any hindrance. She had not seen Chu Liuyue's familiar face for a long time. Moreover, she had not had the chance to talk to her in Fang State City, so she could not help but feel a little emotional when she saw her now. She wanted to jump into Chu Liuyue's arms, but before she could do so, she felt a cold gaze sweep past her. Mu Hongyu coughed and stood in front of Chu Luyue politely. She did not dare to touch her. Lu Yu, why didn't you rest well before coming here? She hadn't even had the time to change her clothes yet. Chu Luyue smiled. Something happened here, so I came here. Mu Hongyu thought she was talking about the loud sound just now, so she nodded and looked at Wan Jiushan. Us too. The elders asked us to come here quickly. I don't know what happened. She had not been in the school for long, so she was naturally not sure about the situation. Chu Luyue. Let's wait here. The elders should be able to handle it. Mu Hongyu did not suspect and nodded. On the other side, Luo Shishir, Luo Yanlin, and the others also walked over. When he saw Chu Luyue, Luo Yanlin's face darkened. Unlike the others, he had already heard about what happened outside from Luo Yanming and the others. Naturally, he knew that the so-called Chu Yu's true identity was Sheng Guanyu, the rumored princess of the Yuntian Tower. In other words, she was Rong Xiu's woman. After hearing all that, Luo Yanlin felt terrible. When he saw her in person, his feelings were even more complicated. His sister actually fell in love with a woman. Originally, he had already thought that if she really insisted, he would ask Chu Yu for her opinion. Fortunately, he did not do that. Otherwise, he would have lost all his face. Luo Yanlin was angry. However, when he thought about it carefully, it was his sister's unrequited love from the beginning to the end. Chu Yu had always been restrained and polite. There was nothing wrong with it. At the end of the day, he could not blame her. Luo Yanlin could only silently swallow his blood. His sister was going to snatch someone from Rong Xiu. Just thinking about it was exciting enough. He took a deep breath and glanced at Luo Shishir. Fortunately, Luo Shishir had basically regained her composure. This was the only thing that comforted him. On the other hand, Zhuosheng was being pulled by many people to ask what had happened in Fang State City and who the beautiful woman who had suddenly appeared was. Zhuosheng was stunned by the questions and scratched his head casually. Her. She's Chu Yu. Everyone was in an uproar. Chu Luyue could clearly feel that the gazes on her had become even more anxious. Fortunately, her psychological endurance had always been quite good, so she did not take these things to heart. Her eyes were fixed on Thousand Wine Mountain. If Rong Xiu had not held her back, she would have already rushed over. The surrounding people obviously did not realize the seriousness of the matter at Thousand Wine Mountain. Zhuosheng was annoyed after being asked so many questions, so he decided to tell them everything. Of course, he chose the exciting content to say. Everyone exclaimed in surprise as they listened, their hearts filled with shock. Almost everyone's attention was focused on Chu Luyue and Rong Xiu. I really didn't expect Chu Yu to be from Shangguanyu. So she's the princess that senior brother Rong Xiu personally chose. No wonder senior brother Rong Xiu treats her so well. Didn't they say that she's an outsider? But her talent is too amazing. And that weapon refining venerable is actually her Taizu. With such a background, who dares to say that she's not worthy? Am I the only one who noticed that she broke through from the early stage of the 8th stage to the middle stage of the 9th stage in just a few months? Oh, I'm already numb. There was no other way. This person could casually pick out any one of them and it would make others envious and jealous. After a few times, one would get used to it. Chu Luyue did not care about this at this moment. Dumpling, did you leave any evidence in the spring of Thousand Wine Mountain? She asked in her heart. Dumpling was stunned for a moment and looked hesitant. This. I don't think so. Chu Luyue's eyelids twitched. However, at this moment, a fluctuation suddenly spread out from the barrier outside the academy. At the same time, a deep and vast dragon's roar resounded throughout the world. Shengguan Jing. Get out here. Digression, 6 p.m. mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1498. This furious roar carried the might of thunder as it reverberated between heaven and earth, clearly landing in the ears of everyone in the academy. Everyone's expression changed, and they immediately looked at Chu Luyue in unison. Shengguan Jing, wasn't that the Taizu of Shangguanyu? Was he the rumored extremely powerful weapon refining supremacy? Just who was it that was so daring to clamor outside the Ling Shao Academy? Chu Liyue's heart suddenly sank. That dragon's roar, everyone, calm down. A low shout that was full of vigor was heard. It was filled with pressure. This caused the originally restless Qingming Square to quickly quiet down. Chu Luyue looked in the direction of the voice. It was Elder Danqing who spoke. They had not seen each other for a while. Elder Danqing looked much more haggard, and the hair at his temples was much whiter, as if it was covered in a layer of frost. He was about to fly towards the gate of the academy when he suddenly stopped and looked at Chu Luyue. Chu, Shangguanyu, go and invite Senior Shangguan to see what's going on. Chu Luyue nodded. Yes. Elder Danqing looked at her with a complicated expression. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he left without saying a word. Chu Luyue turned back and glanced at him. Although Elder Danqing and Jiang Jiwan severed their master-disciple relationship, he still sincerely taught her for several years. Now that she's gone, it's inevitable that he's sad. Rong Xiu said lightly. Don't mind it. Although Elder Danqing was biased in the past, he wouldn't go so far as to blame us for what happened. To say that it was resentment, it really couldn't be considered hatred. At most, she felt a little complicated. After all, a person's death was like a lamp going out. Chu Luyue retracted her gaze. I know. If Elder Danqing really could not get over it, he would definitely come to her directly. Actually, what I'm worried about now is, Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. If he guessed correctly, the person who came today was very likely to be, I'll accompany you back to Jianghu Mountain. Rong Xiu squeezed her hand. Chu Luiyue nodded and immediately set off with Rong Xiu. On the way there, the two of them bumped into Taizu, who happened to be coming out. Taizu. Chu Luiyue immediately went up to him. Are you all right? Taizu held her and looked her up and down. After confirming that she was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. The uneasiness in Chu Luiyue's heart grew stronger, and he grabbed Taizu's sleeve tightly. Taizu, there seems to be, the Great Void Phoenix Dragon Clan. Taizu's expression was grave as he enunciated each word. Their movements are quite fast. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be gripped by something. Taizu and the Great Void Phoenix Dragon Clan had a huge grudge. This time, not long after Taizu woke up, they directly chased him to Lingxiao College. It was obvious that they were serious. If he didn't handle it well, he was afraid. Don't worry. This is Taizu's own business. It won't implicate you in Lingxiao College. Taizu patted Chu Luiyue's head gently and said in a gentle voice. Chu Luiyue frowned. Is a descendant of the Shengguan clan. Naturally, we should advance and retreat together with Taizu. Taizu was stunned when he heard that. Endless emotions seemed to surge in his eyes. In the end, thousands of words turned into one sentence. Good The Shengguan clan had never been afraid of any danger. Don't worry. When I chose to wake up this time, I knew that I would have to face all of this. The great ancestor laughed out loud. Just wait in the college. Taizu will solve these problems. But, Chu Luiyue wanted to go out with him, but on second thought, she might only be a burden if she went, so she swallowed the rest of her words. Then you must be careful. Taizu nodded and looked at Rong Xiu meaningfully. Rong Xiu nodded calmly. Taizu was relieved. His figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. Chu Luiyue raised her gaze slightly and looked in the direction of the college's gate. She knew that at this moment, the great phoenix dragon was waiting for them outside. She didn't know if Taizu could successfully solve these problems this time. Chu Luiyue slowly clenched her fists. The reason why she was so worried was that Taizu and the Great Void Phoenix Dragon clan had been accumulating hatred for a long time. On the other hand, back then, when she helped Zichen reconstruct his body, she used the two wing bones of the Great Void Phoenix Dragon's corpse. Although the remaining corpse had been sealed in the Heavenly Square Cauldron. But now that the Great Void Phoenix Dragon clan was outside the college's barrier, she felt that this would be a big hidden danger. It was like a time bomb that would explode at any time. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. It was from the Thousand Wine Mountain. Chu Luiyue frowned and looked back. Dark clouds gathered in the sky above the Thousand Wine Mountain, forming a huge vortex. The sky was dark, and a storm swept through, as if it was going to swallow the Thousand Wine Mountain. Thunder rumbled from the clouds, and silver snake-like lightning swam everywhere. From time to time, it lit up half the sky, but it made everything seem even more treacherous and terrifying. A storm was coming. From here, one could vaguely see the figures of Elder Bo Yen and the others rushing towards the Thousand Wine Mountain. In the gloomy world, their figures actually seemed so small and insignificant. Chu Luiyue slowly clenched her fists. Thousand Wine Mountain. When Elder Bo Yen and the others arrived, they found that the barrier outside the mountain had already shattered. This was also one of the reasons why this commotion was clearly seen by everyone. But this was not the thing that worried the elders the most. Because, the spring at the top of the mountain had stopped flowing. It was still daytime. The spring seems to be freezing. Elder Wanjing shouted in a deep voice, and there was a rare trace of panic in his eyes. How could this be? Elder Huafeng sucked in a breath of cold air. There's so much Tianlei inside. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be at this time. Elder Bo Yen made a prompt decision. immediately lead Tianlei into the spring. At this time, there was no time to think about why this would happen. The most important thing now was to solve the problem. Elder Wanzheng and Elder Huafeng nodded solemnly. Elder Bo Yen took the lead, and with a flash, he went straight for the spring. Boom! Suddenly, a bolt of heavenly lightning struck down. It fell in front of Elder Bo Yen. Sparks flew everywhere. The violent and terrifying energy seemed to want to tear everything apart. Elder Bo Yen was shocked and immediately set up a barrier in front of him. At the same time, he retreated. However, his chest was still hit by the aftershock. Bo Yen. How are you? Are you okay? The two elders immediately went forward and supported him. Elder Bo Yen shook his head, but his expression was very ugly. I'm fine. But this spring, at this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. They looked up and saw that it was Elder Ouyang. His expression was anxious as he quickly ran over. When he saw the frost at the edge of the spring, he could not help but be shocked and immediately cursed. Who the F***ck stole the Tianlei power from here? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1499. These words caused Elder Bo Yen and the others to be stunned on the spot. Ouyang, what did you say? Tianlei's power had been stolen? How was this possible? Elder Ouyang's figure flashed and flew to the side of the few of them. His expression was anxious and angry as he pointed at the spring. The Tianlei's power that had accumulated for several years inside. If it wasn't stolen, how could it suddenly erupt? He had been wandering around here every day, but he hadn't noticed it at all. Now that it had happened so suddenly, it would be difficult to deal with it. Then what should we do? Elder Huafeng was at a loss. This Thousand Wine Mountain had a special status. Under normal circumstances, it was mainly guarded by Elder Ouyang and the other weapon refiners in the academy. The other elders would at most play a supporting role. Although they knew that the Thousand Wine Mountain was important and that the spring was very precious and could not be touched casually, most of them did not know the specific situation. Now that it had happened so suddenly, they could only be anxious, but they did not know what to do. Elder Ouyang rubbed his face in annoyance. What should we do? What should we do? The freezing of the spring proves that a lot of the Tianlei's power has been stolen. Even if all the weapon refiners in the academy were to refine weapons together and trigger the Tianlei, I'm afraid it would be too late. One had to know that in order to control this spring, they had been working diligently for several years and had spent a lot of effort. Now that something had happened, how could they save it in time? The few of them realized the seriousness of the matter and fell silent with solemn expressions. At this moment, another figure was rapidly approaching them. They raised their heads and saw that it was Shang Yusen. He frowned and looked at them. The spring has started to freeze. Why are you all still here? Shang Yusen, why are you still in the academy? Elder Huafeng asked in surprise. According to the previous pattern, he would not stay in the academy for more than a month. But this time, he had been back for a long time, and he had not left yet. Shang Yusen resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Huafeng, what time is it now? You still have the mood to care about this? Actually, he just wanted to stay in the academy for a while longer and look for Chuyu to study the Scarlet Heaven Sword more. He didn't expect that a bunch of messy things had happened recently, so it had been delayed. Today, it was even worse. The boy had turned into a girl. Where is that senior Shengguan? Shang Yusen went straight to the point. He's a weapon refining venerable. If he's willing to help, there might be some hope. Elder Ouyang slapped his head. How could I have forgotten about that? Although the matter was quite troublesome, they still had a ready-made big helper. However, when Elder Bo Yen and the others heard this, their expressions changed slightly. When they arrived, they also heard the dragon roar, as well as the low roar filled with threat and warning. It seems like some dragons have come to cause trouble for him. He shouldn't be in the academy now. Elder Bo Yen said solemnly. Shang Yusin and Elder Ouyang looked at each other. Obviously, they were still a little confused. Dragon race? What's going on? Dan Qing went to deal with it. We don't know what happened exactly. But that person suppressed 9 dragons in the graveyard of the northern region of the primordial desolate land. If I'm not wrong, he should have a lot of enmity with the dragon clan. Elder Bo Yen guessed with some uncertainty. If it wasn't for the situation at Thousand Wine Mountain, they would have followed him over. What's going on? Elder Ouyang crossed his hands. To be able to make the dragon clan chase after them with such fanfare, it definitely isn't a small matter. By the way, do you know which branch of the dragon clan it is? The few of them shook their heads. They didn't even go to take a look, so how would they know? The other party's pressure is extremely strong. I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with. If that's the case, then I'm afraid he won't be back for a while. Shang Yusin looked at the spring eye. The layer of frost had started to appear from the edge, and a quarter of it had already frozen. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before the spring eye was completely frozen. At that time, I'm afraid, during this period of time, we have been carefully watching over it. There are no abnormalities with the spring eye. How did so much of the heavenly lightning's power get stolen out of nowhere? Elder Ouyang really couldn't understand. Under normal circumstances, when something like this happened, they would definitely be aware of it. Elder Bo Yen suddenly thought of something and his expression changed. Hua Feng, when did Chu Yu, that red-tailed phoenix in Shangguanyu, break through to become a crimson gold heavenly phoenix? Elder Hua Feng pondered for a moment, then his eyes widened slightly. Could it be that you suspect, for the red-tailed phoenix to break through the shackles and become an ancient divine beast, it needs a lot of power? The Tianlei power accumulated in the spring eye is obviously the most suitable. But this doesn't mean that this matter has something to do with her, right? If it was really her red-tailed phoenix who did it, why didn't we notice it at all? The few of them fell silent. This was also what they were most puzzled about. Over the years, they had put in a lot of effort on Thousand Wine Mountain. They were basically clear about any fluctuations that occurred in the spring eye. However, they didn't know that the Tianlei power had been stolen. No matter what, call her over and ask her first. Elder Bo Yen instructed. Elder Hua Feng could only agree. Okay. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu had just returned to the Qingming Plaza when they saw Elder Hua Feng return. When he saw Elder Hua Feng heading straight for him, Chu Luiyue knew something was wrong. Elder Hua Feng waved at her. Bo Yen wants you to go. Chu Luiyue didn't ask any more questions. He took a deep breath and followed her. Seeing that Rong Xiu seemed to be planning to go with them, Elder Hua Feng originally wanted to stop them, but after thinking about it, he decided against it and quickly brought the two of them to the Thousand Wine Mountain. Only the people on the Qingming Square were left bewildered. In front of the Thousand Wine Mountain, Chu Luiyue glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw that there was a layer of frost on the mouth of the spring. From the serious looks on the elders' faces, she knew that they were in big trouble this time. Elder Bo Yan's gaze was sharp. He pointed at the spring and went straight to the point. Girl, does this matter have anything to do with you? At the same time, outside the academy's barrier, the two forces were in a stalemate. Inside the barrier was Shangguan Jing and a few elders of the academy. Outside the barrier was a tall man who looked to be in his 50s. Behind him stood a few young juniors. The man standing at the front was wearing a gray robe. His hair was white and his eyes were purplish gold. On his neck and hands, there were faint purplish gold scales the size of fingernails. Under the sunlight, they reflected a sparkling glow. He stared at Shangguan Jing coldly and sneered. Shangguan Jing, you're lucky. Hand over the corpses of my clansmen and I'll let you die in one piece. Digression, an excavator in his lower abdomen had shoveled away half a mountain. It had been in pain since dawn until now. He struggled to get up. 9 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1500. Hearing this, the expressions of the elders standing inside the barrier changed slightly. Who exactly was this person? He was so domineering. Shangguan Jing was a top-notch weapon refining supremacy in the divine ruins world. How could they be so rude? Elder Danqing had just arrived when he encountered this situation. He could not help but frown. Senior Shangguan. He flew to Shangguan Jing's side and quickly sized up the people outside the barrier. He was secretly shocked. From the looks of it, he was indeed from the Dragon Clan. However, why was the color of their scales a little off? He cupped his hands. I am Elder Danqing of Lingxiao College. May I know why you are here today? However, the old man opposite him only glanced at him before quickly retracting his gaze. His gaze was cold and indifferent, as if he was looking at an ant. It was obvious that he did not take Elder Danqing seriously at all. Elder Danqing's heart surged with anger. Although his status in the academy was not as high as Elder Bo Yan's, it was definitely not low. Even the people from the first-rate aristocratic families would be polite when they saw him. He had never seen such an arrogant person. He knew that the dragon race had always been arrogant, but this was too much. Everyone, you came rashly without informing us in advance. Moreover, you are so arrogant in front of Lingxiao College. Aren't you going a little overboard? Elder Danqing's face darkened. The old man finally glanced at Elder Danqing again. A trace of impatience appeared on his indifferent face. Who do you think you are? Are you worthy of questioning me here? You, Elder Danqing was about to retort when Shangguan Jing stopped him. He smiled and said, "This is between us. Why implicate others?" When Elder Danqing heard this, he had a bad feeling. What kind of status did Shangguan Jing have? Previously, in Fangzhou City, there were so many people present, but he did not show a good expression. However, now that the person who came was so domineering, there was no anger on his face. In fact, his tone was rather polite. The other party's identity was probably even more shocking than he had expected. Shangguan Jing, stop talking nonsense. This time, even if you were hiding in Lingxiao College, it would be easy for me to take your life. If you have the guts, come out immediately and hide inside. Even if you don't feel cowardly, I feel ashamed for you. The person who came had a very bad temper and spoke very straightforwardly. His words were filled with anger. Shangguan Jing didn't seem to be angry. Instead, he laughed. Mao Yao, after so many years, your tone is still as arrogant as ever. Leave his corpse intact. He had to have the ability to kill Shangguan Jing first. Upon hearing this name, Elder Danqing was momentarily stunned. Mao Yao. Why does this name sound so familiar? Suddenly, his heart shook. Her eyes suddenly widened as she looked at the man outside the barrier. Mao Yao. Wasn't that the one who was rather famous in the Great Void Phoenix Dragon race? It was rumored that 1,000 years ago, there was a family that had obtained a great phoenix dragon egg by chance. They secretly brought the dragon egg back and wanted to force a contract with it. Unfortunately, before he could take action, he was caught by the great phoenix dragon. That time, the great phoenix dragon had only sent 3 people. Mao Yao was one of them. Although it was only a second-rate family, its strength was at its peak at that time. There were even 2 god venerables holding down the fort. It was even stronger than some of the declining first-rate families and clans. If they could contract with that great phoenix dragon egg, they might be able to reach a higher level. Unfortunately, they had lost this opportunity forever. Mao Yao and the other 2 only used a day and a night to slaughter their entire clan. After the news spread, the entire divine ruins world was shocked. As one of the 2 great ancient divine beasts, the great phoenix dragon had always been filled with mystery in everyone's impression. Many people might not have the chance to see the great phoenix dragon in their entire lives. As a result, The names of Mao Yao and the other two became the representatives of the great phoenix dragon race from then on. Elder Dan Qing had never thought that he would actually be able to see this legendary figure. He had never thought that it would be under such circumstances. Why did Mao Yao suddenly come here and want to kill Shengguan Jing? It seemed that there had been a long grudge between them. What was going on? Mao Yao sneered. You're extremely cunning and sinister. Back then, you deceived everyone and escaped a calamity. Today, you won't have that chance anymore. He would definitely not make the same mistake twice. Shengguan Jing spread his hands. I know you want that corpse, but it's not in my hands now. You're lying. Mao Yao did not believe his words at all. Back then, you spent so much effort to hide that corpse. If it's not in your hands, where is it? 1,000 years have passed. Shengguan Jing suddenly raised his voice. The world has changed. Things remain the same, but people have changed. Don't tell me you don't know what the primordial north region is like now? I've been in a deep sleep for 1,000 years. What happened? What did I lose? How did I control it? If you don't believe me, you can search me. As Shengguan Jing spoke, he lifted his foot and was about to walk out. Senior Shengguan. Elder Dan Qing hurriedly went forward and blocked his path. This is a serious matter. You must think twice. The Great Void Phoenix Dragon clan had come aggressively. Who knew if they would attack Shengguan Jing the moment he went out? This person was still in Lingxiao College. How could anything happen to him? Mao Yao stared at Shengguan Jing as if he wanted to see something from his face. However, both of them were old foxes. One hid his thoughts deeper than the other. No one could guess who was the other. Shengguan Jing, if you really have a clear conscience, come out directly. I have my ways to check if that corpse is on you. If that thing is really not with you, we'll forget about today's matter. But if we find out anything, don't blame us for being rude. Mao Yao could not be bothered to talk nonsense. At this moment, he did not rush forward, break the barrier, and drag Shengguan Jing over on account of Lingxiao College. No one knew how furious he was when he found out that Shengguan Jing was still alive. The next moment, Shengguan Jing said straightforwardly, all right. Everyone present was shocked. Elder Dan Qing wanted to stop him again. Senior Shengguan, they're here to look for me. It has nothing to do with Lingxiao College or you. You don't have to get involved in this. Shengguan Jing said with a smile. Besides, I have a clear conscience. What's there to be afraid of? As he spoke, he looked at the elder in charge of guarding the barrier. The two elders looked at each other and finally opened the barrier hesitantly. Shengguan Jing took a step forward. Both sides were in a stalemate. Shengguan Jing opened his arms. If you want to investigate, just do it. Mao Yao sneered. Let's see how long you can be stubborn. As he spoke, he closed his eyes and crossed his hands in front of him. Then, a purple gold light bloomed in his palm. A piece of purple gold translucent scale flew into the air. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1501. The scale armor slowly flew around Shengguan Jing's body, as if it was checking something bit by bit. Shengguan Jing could feel a subtle force sweeping across his body, but his expression remained the same. He put one hand behind his back and raised his chin slightly, calm and composed. The corpse was indeed not with him now, so of course, nothing could be found. Mao Yao looked at the scale armor that did not have any reaction and gradually frowned. Could it be that it really was not there? But back then, Shengguan Jing had formed a grudge with them because of that corpse. How could he bear to give up just like that? Finally, the scale armor flew around Shengguan Jing, but it still did not find anything. Shengguan Jing laughed. How is it? Do you believe me now? Mao Yao's brows were still tightly knitted, and his face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, cold to the bone. Who knows what method you used to hide it? This Shangguan Jing could even deceive them about his life and death. Hiding a corpse was not a small matter. The smile on Shangguan Jing's face faded a little. Mao Yao. What happened back then was indeed my fault, but I sincerely apologize to all of you. It was you who refused to forgive me and wanted to take my life no matter what. I had no choice but to choose to escape. As for me faking my death to deceive you. May I ask, who doesn't want to live well in this world? I don't think I deserve to die, so of course, I won't let you bully me to death. Moreover, I have been sleeping for 1,000 years. I don't know anything. It's no different from being dead. Even if it's to forgive me, it's enough. Today, you came to kill me without any reason. I tolerated it and even agreed to let you search me. This is enough to show my sincerity, right? What else do you want? His attitude had always been good before, but now he suddenly became tough, as if he had changed into a different person. The elders inside the barrier trembled with fear when they heard this. At this moment, he was still outside the barrier, only a short distance away from Mao Yao and the others. If they wanted to make a move, Shangguan Jing might not be able to escape successfully. At this moment, his words were sharp and even a little ear-piercing. The elders broke out in cold sweat for him. Mao Yao's expression changed as he stared at him for a long time. You really don't know? Shangguan Jing snorted. It's up to you to believe it or not. I've already said what I wanted to say. After saying this, he actually turned around and went back. Hey, you, the young men behind him were a little dissatisfied when they saw this. Just as they were about to say something, they were stopped by Mao Yao. In the territory of Lingxiao College, they had to give him some face. It was not appropriate to kill him directly. He had said that he did not want to kill Shangguan Jing by killing Shangguan Jing. He could kill him at any time, but it was more important to find his corpse. Is by luck. He frowned as countless guesses flashed through his mind. With a thought, the piece of scale flew back to him. However, just as the scale armor was about to fall back into his palm, it suddenly changed direction and flew towards the direction of the Spirit Firmament Academy. See. The sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. The scales drew a straight purple gold line in the air. One of Shangguan Jing's feet had already stepped back into the boundary. His muscles tensed up when he heard the noise. A strong sense of danger welled up in his heart. Without thinking, he quickened his pace and entered. Seal the barrier. He let out a deep shout. The two elders who were in charge of guarding the barrier were shocked when they heard that. They instinctively attacked. However, they were fast, but the scale was even faster. In the blink of an eye, it had already flown in. Shangguan Jing immediately turned his head and saw a purple gold flash past his eyes. The next moment, that thing brushed past his cheek and flew in a certain direction in the academy. It was terrifyingly fast, causing Shangguan Jing's face to feel a slight but clear cut. He looked in the direction that the thing was flying, and his heart skipped a beat. It was flying towards Thousand Wine Mountain. Senior Shangguan, this, Elder Danqing was also momentarily stunned. Strengthen the barrier of the academy. Don't let them in. As Shangguan Jing spoke, he had already disappeared from the spot. He chased after that piece of scale. Behind him, outside the barrier, Mao Yao had already reacted. He gritted his teeth. It's really inside. Shangguan Jing, just you wait. Thousand Wine Mountain. Facing Elder Bo Yan's questioning, Chu Liuyue's hands in her sleeves quietly tightened. Previously, it was not that the elders did not suspect her. They had even called her to Thousand Wine Mountain to question her carefully. She had always denied it. Because there was no evidence and there were basically no major problems, most of the matters were left unsettled in the end. But it was different this time. Even though she didn't know what secrets were hidden in the spring, she could roughly guess from the current situation that this matter wasn't simple. Although the red-tailed red phoenix has the bloodline of the crimson gold heavenly phoenix, it is almost 1 in 10,000 to successfully break through. As for yours, it completed its transformation in just a few months after entering the academy. Is this due to the power of Tianlei in the spring? Elder Bo Yan's question was very direct. Chu Liuyue's heart wavered. Chi. Just as she spoke, a cold wind suddenly blew from behind. Danger. Her heart skipped a beat and she immediately dodged to the side. At the same time, Rong Xiu had already made his move. A golden barrier quickly appeared around Chu Luyue. However, in the next moment, a crack appeared on the barrier. Chu Luyue turned around in shock and saw a purple-gold translucent scale that was extremely sharp and embedded into the barrier set up by Rong Xiu. The scale was half the size of an adult's palm. The edges were extremely thin and sharp. It was wrapped in a turbulent aura. Chu Luyue was very familiar with that aura. This was the scale of the great phoenix dragon. Crack. The barrier shattered. The scale went straight for Chu Liuyue's dantian. Digression, everyone, have a good rest. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1502. Chu Luyue retreated without hesitation. However, that piece of scale followed her like a shadow and kept approaching her. Its speed was so fast that it was almost impossible to see its trace. She could only hear the sound of something breaking through the air. Black spatial cracks had already appeared in the sky. That was enough to show its power. Chu Luyue took a step back and retreated again. At the same time, golden light surged on her body. The pure gold sacred armor quickly wrapped around her body. She was exquisite and slender. Although she was still wearing men's clothes, she did not deliberately hide her figure after her identity was exposed. She might have been a little immature in the past. Yet now, she had almost completely matured. Every single move she made was breathtaking and graceful. Swoosh! That piece of scale flew straight at her. Chu Luyue bent her waist backward and her body instantly bent into an unimaginable arc chi. The scale armor brushed past her body by an inch, just barely scraping by. Chu Luyue could even feel the pain of her face being cut by this terrifying aura. The next moment, she straightened her body and half-turned her body. She raised her hand gently. A streak of pure gold flame suddenly gushed out from her palm. It quickly condensed into a wall of fire around her body. The raging fire burned fiercely, causing the surrounding temperature to rise instantly. Even the air seemed to be scorched. At the same time, a clear and bright cry spread far and wide between heaven and earth. Screech! A huge pure gold figure wrapped in raging fire appeared in front of Chu Luyue. It was Dumpling. It was as if the vast pressure from a distant time and space almost caused the space to collapse. Dumpling's appearance finally made that piece of scale stop its movement. However, it still floated in the air quietly and refused to retreat. It seemed to be in a confrontation with Dumpling. Seeing this scene, everyone in the school was shocked. That is the legendary ancient divine beast, the pure gold heavenly phoenix. Those rumors are actually true. Shang Guanyu really made a contract with the crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Ordinary people might not even have the chance to see a crimson gold heavenly phoenix in their lifetime, but Shang Guanyu is actually able to form a contract with it. It really makes me feel bored even if I'm jealous. Her crimson gold celestial phoenix seems to have broken through from the previous crimson-tailed red phoenix. This kind of luck was truly unparalleled. Didn't Lu Yintong also have a red-tailed phoenix? However, it can't be compared to Shang Guanyu. What's with that scale? It appeared so suddenly and fiercely. Seeing this, the people of the academy began to discuss something in low voices. As for Elder Bo Yan and the others in the air, their eyes were filled with shock and they could not react for a while. The scale armor that had suddenly appeared was definitely not an ordinary item. Just now, it had easily broken through Rong Xiu's barrier. Scales of this color, could it be Elder Bo Yen suddenly thought of something and sucked in a cold breath. Chu Liuyue's eyes were solemn as she stared at the scale armor in front of her. The crimson gold heavenly phoenix and the great phoenix dragon were two great ancient divine beasts. Since ancient times, these two great clans had always been in a hostile relationship, and the competition between them was very intense. Of course, the other clans were not even qualified to participate in this battle. Therefore, only after Dumpling's appearance did the arrogant scale armor of the great phoenix dragon finally stop for the time being. It was rather wary of Dumpling. As for Dumpling, Chu Luyue narrowed her eyes slightly. Even though she was standing behind Dumpling and could not see its current expression, their minds were connected, and they did not need any extra words or actions to know each other's state of mind. She had almost never seen Dumpling so cautious and careful. Its temperament was jumpy, and after breaking through to become a crimson gold heavenly phoenix, it was even more undisciplined and free. Its noble bloodline allowed it to easily crush all other magical beasts, except for the great phoenix dragon. Just as this side was in a deadlock, Shengguan Jing had already flashed back. At a glance, he saw the scale armor floating quietly in front of Chu Luyue, and his heart sank. This thing was very sharp, and it actually found out that the corpse was now on This time, it would probably be very difficult to explain clearly. Roar. Just as everyone was in chaos, a deafening dragon roar suddenly came from above. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly raised their heads to look. In the sky not far away, a few figures were suspended in midair. They were unable to enter due to the academy's barrier. However, they were able to clearly see the situation within the academy just by standing there. Who is in charge of guarding the barrier today? They actually allowed them to go up. Elder Bo Yen reprimanded angrily. Outside the Ling Shao Academy, there was a huge enchantment. Under normal circumstances, everyone would enter from the side door. The top position was extremely sensitive, and no one was allowed to casually approach it. The defensive power of these places was basically the strongest. But now, Elder Huafeng's heart suddenly jumped. Bo Yen. I'm afraid it's not that our people have neglected their duties, but they are too strong. The man in the lead seems to be the great phoenix dragon. Elder Bo Yen hadn't noticed it at first, but after his reminder, he hurriedly looked over. His heart sank as soon as he took a look at it. Purple gold scales, dragon roars. If it wasn't the great phoenix dragon, who could it be? Then, he suddenly turned around. That scale armor should also be the great phoenix dragons? But why did they target Shengguan Yu? Right at this moment, Elder Danqing also hurried back. His face was a little pale. Bo Yen, our people couldn't stop them. The great phoenix dragon race was really too strong. Especially that one was the famous Mao Yao. Actually, many people didn't know this name. After all, it was something that happened 1,000 years ago. If they didn't specifically understand it, ordinary people wouldn't know so much. However, they understood the words, Great Void Phoenix Dragon. For a moment, everyone in Qingming Square was shocked speechless. Great Phoenix Dragon, hadn't it not appeared in the world for a long, long time? Why did it suddenly appear today? And the moment it appeared, it went straight for Lingshao College. Thinking back to the series of events just now, it wasn't difficult to guess that the true target of the great phoenix dragon this time was actually Shengguan Jing and Shengguan Yu. Didn't they just solve the problems of the various families in Fangzhou City? It hadn't even been a day, so how did they provoke this great phoenix dragon again? Elder Bo Yan's mind raced as he frowned. This great phoenix dragon appeared at the wrong time. He moved forward and cupped his hands at Mao Yao and the others. He was very polite. So it's Senior Mao Yao who came from afar. We hope you can forgive us for not welcoming you. Mao Yao only glanced at him indifferently before looking at Chu Luyue. A cold smile crept up the corner of his mouth. That thing is on you? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1503. He didn't say what it was, but Chu Luiyue immediately understood. What else could make the great Phoenix Dragon clan spend so much effort to hunt it down other than that corpse? Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. But Mao Yao didn't seem interested in her answer. The reaction of that scale was enough to explain everything. He sized up Chu Luiyue and then looked at Sheng Wanjing, who was not far away. His eyes became more and more sarcastic. So it's the same bloodline. Sheng Wanjing, you're so generous to your descendants. You're actually willing to give away such a thing. Thinking about it carefully, this was actually normal. Who knew what kind of storm the great Phoenix Dragon's corpse would cause if it was spread out? Only one's own people were the most reliable. To think that he almost believed Sheng Wanjing's absurd lie just now. From the beginning to the end, he had never thought of returning it. Sheng Wanjing's expression was cold. He flew in front of Chu Luiyue and blocked her behind him. Mao Yao, if you have any problems, come at me. Don't involve others. Others? She's your descendant. How can she be considered as others? Moreover, the thing is with her. Mao Yao raised his hand and pointed at Chu Luiyue. The scales on the back of his hand shone with a sparkling light, sharp and cold. No wonder you're so bold. So you're relying on the crimson gold sky phoenix's support. The moment he saw Dumpling, a trace of disgust flashed across Mao Yao's eyes. As an ancient divine beast, you actually made a contract with a despicable and lowly human. You're really degenerating. Boom. The flames on Dumpling's body suddenly rose. Her eyes were also filled with surging anger. It was fine to talk about it, but definitely not to slander her. Pfft, look at you, do you really think of yourself as a dog of the human race? I really don't know what those old things in the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan are doing. They actually allowed their clansmen to do such a thing. Even if you don't find it embarrassing, I feel ashamed for you. Magical beasts were hostile to humans, not to mention ancient divine beasts. Because of their noble bloodline, they were used to looking down on everyone. In addition to what had happened to Sheng Wanjing, Mao Yao had a deep prejudice and hatred against the human race. At this moment, his words were naturally exceptionally unpleasant to the ears. Tuanzi let out a sharp cry from its throat. It flapped its wings as if it was about to rush out and have a showdown with the other party. Dumpling. Chu Luiyue's voice was exceptionally cold and calm. Dumpling was filled with unwillingness, but she could only endure it. Chu Luiyue gently stroked its wings. Dumpling gradually calmed down. Then, Chu Luiyue stepped forward. You, Sheng Wanjing asked worriedly. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Rest assured, I merely have some things that I wish to say to this person. Seeing her calm eyes, Sheng Wanjing was slightly relieved. After hesitating for a moment, he finally nodded. Chu Luiyue took another step forward and looked up at Mao Yao. I heard that Senior Mao Yao has an extremely high status in the Great Void Phoenix Dragon race. But I didn't know when you started to care about the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan as well. Dumpling has followed me for many years. From a 9-colored heavenly pheasant back then, she grew and broke through to become the current Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix. With just one sentence, you want to erase our many years of friendship. Isn't that too much? Mao Yao was shocked. His eyes swept back and forth between Dumpling and Chu Luiyue. This Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix actually broke through from a 9-colored heavenly pheasant? If that was the case, then others really had no right to stand out and criticize. His face tensed up. Even so, now that she's a Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix, she naturally has to follow the rules of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Don't you know that after she breaks through, she should go to the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan to acknowledge her ancestors? Chu Luiyue froze and looked at Dumpling. She really didn't know about this. Dumpling lowered its head and rubbed against her shoulder gently. Actually, after its bloodline completely awakened, it already knew about this. But because Chu Luiyue had been in constant trouble, it didn't mention it. It originally wanted to find a chance to talk to her after all these messy things were over, but unexpectedly, Chu Liuyue's mind was connected to dumplings, so naturally, she immediately understood what Dumpling was thinking. Her heart warmed, and she immediately looked at Mao Yao with a chuckle. Senior Mao Yao, I wonder if you've heard of this saying, the eunuch is more anxious than the emperor. We're not in a hurry to do this, but as a great void phoenix dragon, you're very anxious. Mao Yao's expression changed. How dare you? Chu Liuyue's expression was indifferent. This is the first time you're seeing me. Perhaps you're not used to it. After a long time, you'll know that I'm used to being impudent and never like to bow down to others. Especially, people who are already rude to me. They were here to kill her. Did she have to welcome them with a smile? She didn't treat herself as a human being. You. Mao Yao's face turned red with anger. This pair of grandfather and grandson were both masters who could infuriate people to death without paying for it. The old one was already like that, but the young one was even worse. Arrogant. Really arrogant. He took a deep breath and looked at Elder Bo Yen. You're the dean of Lingxiao College? Elder Bo Yen frowned. The dean is out traveling and is not here now. I'm Bo Yen, and I'm in charge of everything in Lingxiao College for the time being. Senior Mao Yao, is there any misunderstanding here? Why don't we all calm down and sit down to talk? Misunderstanding? Mao Yao sneered. You can ask the two of them what good things they've done. Elder Bo Yen felt a little uneasy. The great void phoenix dragon race boasted of their noble status and rarely interfered in the affairs of the human race. This time, they actually charged over directly. Something must have really happened. On account of Lingxiao College, I'll give you a chance. Hand over the two of them immediately. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite. Mao Yao's attitude was very firm. From the looks of it, if they didn't do as he said, he might really do anything. Elder Bo Yen looked at Shangguan Jing with a grave expression. Senior Shangguan, what's going on? Shangguan Jing frowned as if he was thinking about how to deal with the situation in front of him. Actually, it's not a big deal. Chu Luyue suddenly spoke. Everyone looked over, their hearts filled with sorrow. The great void phoenix dragon race had already been forced to charge here. How was it not a big deal? Chu Luyue tucked her loose strands of hair behind her ears and calmly said, it's fine. 1,000 years ago, Taizu accidentally obtained the corpse of a great void phoenix dragon. Taizu originally planned to return it, but Senior Mao Yao said that he wanted to take his life no matter what. Helpless, Taizu could only choose to escape. And that corpse never had the chance to be returned. Until today, 1,000 years later, Taizu woke up and Senior Mao Yao and the others chased after them again. Elder Bo Yen trembled with fear when he heard that. Then why don't we make peace on account of the academy? Senior Shangguan, if you return that corpse, Senior Mao Yao will also let it go. How about that? Nothing. Chu Luyue rejected this suggestion and said indifferently, I've already used the wing bones of that corpse. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1505. Originally, he thought that with the barrier separating them, he would still be somewhat safe. Who knew that Mao Yao would use such a method? Not only did he transform his real body into a piece of scale armor and barge into Ling Xiao Academy, but he even wanted to attack Chu Luyue without saying a word. How could Lingxiao College not react? A huge and muscular figure appeared in midair. That dragon was covered in purplish gold dragon scales. Its claws were sharp, and its aura was shocking. His eyes were a deep black with a hint of purple, giving him a sense of mystery. It was cold, arrogant, and indifferent. Its speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of Chu Luyue. At the same time, it let out a low and oppressive dragon roar. Roar! In an instant, a terrifying force surged from all directions. The space around Chu Luiyue was instantly compressed. Her chest felt stuffy, and it seemed that the force in her body had become slow and stagnant. The next moment, an indescribably heavy force came crashing down. Chu Luiyue's figure flew out instantly. Be careful!" Sheng Wanjing exclaimed. Chu Luiyue only felt a blur in front of her eyes, and her body retreated uncontrollably. However, this state did not last for long. A gentle and strong force quickly supported her waist, helping to remove that shocking force. Then, she fell into a broad and warm embrace. A familiar cold fragrance came, and it made her feel at ease. Chu Luiyue looked back and saw Rong Xiu looking ahead coldly, and his murderous intent was overflowing. "Senior Mao Yao, think carefully before you attack. Is now my Yuntian Tower's princess consort. If you hurt or kill her, you will completely break with my Yuntian Tower." His voice was low and powerful, and every word was like thunder. The surroundings were silent for a moment. Obviously, no one expected Rong Xiu to be so decisive. He directly blocked the entire Yuntian Tower. A trace of astonishment flashed across the pair of dragon eyes. Yuntian Tower? Princess? After Mao Yao sensed that Sheng Wanjing was still alive, he led his men to chase after him. He didn't have time to learn anything else. Therefore, he did not know that Chu Luiyue had such an identity. The Yuntian Tower was a peak existence among the first-rate families in the Divine Ruins. Even someone as powerful as the Great Phoenix Dragon had to be wary of him. It would have been fine if she was just an ordinary person, but the key point was that this woman was actually a princess. This was going to be tricky. Mao Yao's eyes were still filled with anger. Even so, she dared to use the corpses of my Great Phoenix Dragon race. She deserves death. I can't let this matter go just like that. We never intended to shirk our responsibilities. Sheng Wanjing heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Rong Xiu save Chu Luiyue in time. In a flash, he appeared in front of Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue, confronting Mao Yao. "Mao Yao. We've let you down, and we've shown our sincerity to negotiate a solution with you. But if you're still so stubborn, then there's nothing to talk about." Elder Bo Yan had also reacted. He quickly followed up and said in a low voice. "Senior Mao Yao, we respect your honorable status, but it doesn't mean that we'll tolerate you doing whatever you want in Lingxiao College's territory. If you act wantonly again, we won't sit still and wait for death." Mao Yao was so angry that he panted heavily. Were the people of the Shengguan clan sick in the head? They were clearly the ones in the wrong, but why did they still speak like they were the boss? But this matter was really not easy to deal with. On one hand, the Yuntian Tower clearly wanted to support her. On the other hand, they were now in Lingxiao College. They were indeed in the wrong if they suddenly attacked. Both sides were in a stalemate. The many students who were watching below all held their breaths. They were extremely nervous. Before this, who would have thought that they would actually see such a crazy scene in Lingxiao College with their own eyes? In the silence, Chu Luiyue gently patted Rong Xiu's hand. Rong Xiu glanced at her and frowned slightly. Chu Luiyue smiled and shook her head, giving him a reassuring look. Rong Xiu then reluctantly let go of his hand. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and took half a step forward. "Taizu, Elder Bo Yan, I've said before that since this matter started because of me, then it's only right for me to bear the responsibility and solve it." Sheng Wanjing and Elder Bo Yan looked at each other. They wanted to say something but stopped. How could this matter be so simple? Chu Luiyue didn't seem to care about the two's response. Her gaze was fixed on Mao Yao. "Senior Mao Yao, I'm afraid it's a little difficult for you to make me pay with my life. Why don't we use another method? As long as I can do it, I'll do my best to make up for it." She said it sincerely and seriously, but in Mao Yao's ears, it sounded like a joke. "Make up for it? With just you?" Chu Luiyue nodded. "With just me." Mao Yao wanted to sneer, but when he saw that pair of dark and calm eyes, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. For some reason, he couldn't laugh anymore. In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Actually, Sheng Guanyu was right about one thing. With the protection of Yun Tianke and the Spirit Firmament Academy, it was impossible to take her life just by relying on this. Then, indeed, he could only use another method to make up for it. All right then. Since you've said so, I have 2 requests. As long as you can do it, this matter will be over. Chu Luyue nodded. Please speak. Mao Yao stared at her. First, you have to retrieve the used bone from the legendary three-eyed eagle's body. Together with the rest of the corpses, they were returned in one piece. Second, I can spare your life, but as a punishment, you have to withstand 3 of my moves. As long as you can endure it, this grudge will be over. Before Chu Luyue could speak, Sheng Guanjing could no longer hold back. Mao Yao. Don't go overboard. What level are you and what level is you, If you let you, withstand 3 of your moves, aren't you openly asking for her life? If you want to talk, then talk properly. Otherwise, don't talk so much nonsense. You're wasting everyone's time. Sheng Guanjing was really angry. Mao Yao was an important existence in the great phoenix dragon race. His status was noble and his strength was tyrannical. However, Yu was only at the intermediate stage of the 9th level now. Not to mention 3 moves, in one move, he was afraid that she would, Mao Yao sneered. Why? You can't accept it? Don't forget, she was the one who said that she would take responsibility for her own actions. Didn't you say that you were ambitious and unyielding just now? Why are you suddenly afraid now? I've also made it clear. If you really want to reconcile, agree to my conditions. If you don't, what I said earlier still counts. I also sincerely want to reconcile with you. Chu Luyue suddenly spoke and interrupted Mao Yao. However, I can only agree to the second of your 2 conditions. Zi Chen is my contracted fiend. Since I've helped him reconstruct his body, I definitely won't let anyone destroy him. I can't, and I won't allow anyone else. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1506. After Chu Luyue said this, the surroundings instantly fell silent. Even Mao Yao's eyes showed some astonishment. These 2 conditions, you rejected the first and accepted the second? Are you sure? Chu Luyue nodded. This is my bottom line, and I will not back down. If you think it's inappropriate, then, I can't do anything about it. Mao Yao stared at Chu Luyue with a strange expression. In fact, these 2 conditions were casually mentioned by him. Because he thought that Chu Luyue would definitely not accept the second condition. What was the difference between that and courting death? But he didn't expect her to refute the first condition. A wave of fluctuation suddenly surged from her dantian. Zi Chen's voice was deeper and sharper than usual, as if he was suppressing something. If it wants the wing bone, I'll return it. There's no need for you to pay with your life. Don't mess around. Chu Luyue said softly in her heart. I spent a lot of effort to reconstruct your physical body. How can I give it up just like that? Besides, the wing bone of the great phoenix dragon is not so easy to obtain. Such an opportunity, if missed once, would not come again in the future. She couldn't bear to part with it. But, with your current strength, you can't take 3 of its moves. Zi Chen's voice was tinged with a hint of urgency. It was a divine beast, and it had fused with 2 wing bones of the great phoenix dragon. It knew too well how powerful this race was. Yes, Chu Luyue was much stronger than cultivators of the same level, and could even fight against those of a higher level. Although it was only at the intermediate stage of the 9th stage, it had the strength to fight against a demigod, or even a supreme god. But Mao Yao, even an exalted god expert, might not be a match for it. If Chu Luyue agreed, she would be gambling with her life. I'm not going to fight it alone. Chu Luyue smiled. Others may not know, but don't you know? I have quite a few trump cards on me, so I might be able to withstand these 3 moves. In any case, as long as he could get through this, all grudges would be resolved, and everything would be fine. But it's still too dangerous. If it goes all out, you might not even have the time or opportunity to use your trump card. Zichen was still strongly against it. I'm just a half-dead soul. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have the chance to see the light of day again. You've already helped me too much. I can't, Zichen, do you really think it just wants the corpse back? Chu Luiyue suddenly asked softly. Zichen choked. 1,000 years ago, the Taizu didn't do anything to the corpse and even expressed their willingness to return it. However, they still said that they wanted the Taizu dead no matter what. If it were me, I'd do the same. Even if I sacrifice you and return your corpse to them, this matter will not end. What they want is for the great phoenix dragon to always be high and mighty, and for others to always be subservient before them. At a time like this, it's useless to say or do anything. Only by confronting them head-on can we have a glimmer of hope of survival. She was willing to agree to Mao Yao's outrageous request because it had said it in front of so many people. No matter what the outcome was, she had to admit it. This was her only chance to turn the tables. Zichen was silent for a long time. I live and die with the Lord. Chu Luiyue exhaled softly. Suddenly, something came close to her cheek. Chu Luiyue turned her head and smiled as she patted Dumpling's head. With me around, this time, there will only be life and death. Perhaps it was the smile on her face that provoked Mao Yao. It was hot-headed and gritted its teeth as it agreed. Okay. If you can really survive my 3 moves, we won't pursue the matter of the corpse anymore. New and old grudges will be settled. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. It's a deal. Crazy. She was really crazy. After Chu Luiyue's voice fell, almost everyone widened their eyes in shock. They couldn't believe their ears. With the strength of a middle stage 9th stage, she took the punishment of 3 moves from the great phoenix dragon. Was she already prepared to die, or did she think too highly of herself? Everyone knew what had happened in Fangzhou City earlier, and they all knew that her strength was indeed not bad. But it also depended on who she was compared to. Facing the great phoenix dragon head-on, and the famous Mao Yao. Wasn't she courting death? Elder Wanzheng and the others also turned slightly pale. They wanted to persuade her, but seeing Chu Luiyue's determined expression, as if she had already made up her mind, they didn't know what to say for a moment. This was too ridiculous. Chu Luiyue didn't care about everyone's reaction. She looked left and right before she moved and chose a relatively empty spot. Please don't affect others when you attack later. Mao Yao was so angry that he almost laughed. You'd better take care of yourself first. Chu Luiyue's lips curved. Thank you for your concern. Mao Yao's chest tightened. He finally realized that Shangguan Yu needed to be taught a lesson. Now that she was sharp-tongued, she was very powerful. Let's see if she can still be so carefree later. It moved and flew in front of Chu Luiyue. The woman and the dragon faced each other from afar. Chu Luiyue cupped her hands. Please. Arrogant. Mao Yao sneered in his heart. In the next moment, it swung its dragon tail and headed straight for Chu Luiyue. Wherever the purple-gold dragon tail passed, the space collapsed inch by inch. Swoosh. Chu Luiyue held the scarlet cloud sword tightly in one hand and summoned the black shield at the same time. It stood in front of her. Digression. Tomorrow at 12:00 mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1507. Compared to the huge dragon tail, Chu Luiyue's figure seemed especially small. The scales on the purple-gold dragon tail flickered with a dazzling cold light, and it came with a fierce aura. Immediately after, several streams of light flew out and surrounded Chu Luiyue. From afar, she seemed to be trapped in a translucent purple-gold ball of light. In an instant, the space around Chu Luiyue seemed to be controlled by this power and quickly froze. Even the force in Chu Luiyue's body almost stopped flowing. Chu Luiyue's heart jumped. The great phoenix dragon's god realm was actually so domineering. When she encountered other divine beasts or cultivators who used their god realm, Chu Luiyue still had some room to move. However, in front of the great phoenix dragon, everything was in vain. It was extremely difficult for her to even move her feet. Chu Luiyue frantically urged the force in her body to circulate. However, after spending a lot of effort, it seemed that there was still no effect. At this moment, the force in her body was like the surface of a lake that was completely frozen. It could not cause any ripples at all. Gradually, her forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat, and her lips were faintly pale. Mao Yao looked at her and sneered. You overestimate yourself. Why did she think that the great phoenix dragon race was an ancient divine beast? When she agreed to the second condition, she should have been prepared to die. Now, it was just the beginning, and she already had no strength to fight back. There was no need to mention what would happen next. Swoosh! The huge dragon tail had already swung in front of Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue could even feel the biting cold wind coming from all directions. It was as if it was going to crush her. Suddenly, a boundary formed by reddish gold flames appeared around Chu Luiyue. The blazing temperature almost caused half the sky to become dry and dry. The smell of burning filled the air, making people feel anxious. Screech! Following this clear cry, Dumpling spread out her arms and stood in front of Chu Luiyue, protecting her firmly behind her. In its eyes, there was no longer any of its usual laziness. Instead, there was only endless battle intent. The feathers on its body burned with scarlet gold flames. A vast pressure descended. Seeing Dumpling appear, a trace of fear flashed in Mao Yao's eyes, but soon after, he sneered. For the sake of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, I'll give you a chance. As long as you step aside immediately, I'll spare your life. Dumpling didn't say anything. She only flapped her wings and charged towards Mao Yao. Idiot! Mao Yao coldly rebuked. The relationship between the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan and the Great Void Phoenix Dragon race had always been subtle. Most of the time, both sides minded their own business and appeared to be calm and peaceful. But in reality, the battles in the open and in the dark had never stopped. It didn't like Dumpling to begin with. However, it didn't want to cause a dispute between the two races, so it gave her a chance to compromise. Unfortunately, the other party didn't like it. In that case, it had nothing to say. How could a mere young crimson gold heavenly phoenix cause such a huge commotion? However, at this moment, a huge black figure suddenly appeared in midair. The cold air was so cold that it covered the sky and the sun. Legendary three-eyed eagle. When Mao Yao saw Zichen appear, deep hatred burst out from its eyes. Because it had already sensed a familiar aura from the other party. The Great Void Phoenix Dragon's corpse was indeed in the legendary three-eyed eagle's body. Dumpling and Zichen attacked from both sides together. A reddish gold flame whip lashed out and wrapped around Mao Yao's dragon tail. Mao Yao swung it angrily and broke free. How dare you embarrass yourself with such petty tricks? The dragon's tail was about to hit Tuanzi. Zichen immediately stepped forward and swept past Mao Yao's dragon tail. Whoosh! Its extremely sharp claws scratched Mao Yao's body. It made an ear-piercing sound. How dare you! Miao Yao was enraged. His figure turned, originally wanting to directly entangle Zichen, but Zichen's speed was too fast, and he pounced at empty air. It looked down and saw a white scratch on its dragon tail. In the eyes of everyone, Zichen's attack didn't make Mao Yao bleed. It was like scratching an itch. The difference in strength was obvious. However, Mao Yao didn't think so. The Great Void Phoenix Dragon's level was much higher than the legendary three-eyed eagle's, and its strength was far above the other parties. Now that it was caught like this, Mao Yao felt that it was a great humiliation. It was furious and simply changed direction. Its body moved, and its dragon tail slammed heavily on Zichen's body. Smack! With a muffled sound, Zichen's body was instantly sent flying. Bang! Zichen crashed into the middle of the Thousand Wine Mountain. For a moment, rocks flew everywhere, black feathers flew, and blood stains were everywhere. It struggled to get up, but found that several of its bones were broken. In some places, its flesh was overturned, and broken bones could even be seen sticking out diagonally. It was a ghastly sight. Everyone was trembling with fear. In their impression, the legendary three-eyed eagle was considered an extremely powerful divine beast. Especially the one that Chu Luiyue had contracted. It was the legendary eagle master, and its strength was definitely one of the best among the legendary three-eyed eagles. However, such a divine beast couldn't even withstand a single blow from the great void phoenix dragon. Let alone Chu Luiyue. Elder Wanzheng and the others watched from the side and were all sweating. After shaking off Zichen, Mao Yao focused his attention on Chu Luiyue again. At this moment, Chu Luiyue was still desperately trying to mobilize the force in her body. Traces of force gushed out from her energy center and poured into the shield and scarlet cloud sword. Even if they help you, it's just a waste of energy. As Mao Yao spoke, his dragon tail swung out again. This time, its speed was much faster than before. Before the crowd could even see it clearly, they could only vaguely see a purple-gold rainbow streak across the sky. In the next moment, the terrifying force was already closing in on Chu Luiyue. The golden flames around Chu Luiyue were torn apart by the strong wind. Her body was completely exposed in front of Mao Yao. At this moment, Chu Luiyue's vision blurred. Bang! Dumpling stood in front of Chu Luiyue and took the hit. Dumpling! Chu Luiyue exclaimed. Dumpling was also violently shaken off. Although the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix and the Great Void Phoenix Dragon were ancient divine beasts of the same level, Dumpling had just broken through not long ago. Whether it was in terms of strength or experience, she couldn't be compared to Mao Yao. Before Chu Luiyue had time to check on Dumpling's injuries, she felt a cold wind coming from the front. She looked up and saw that the dragon tail was already closing in on her face. She made a prompt decision and raised the black shield, completely hiding her figure within it. Boom! The dragon tail slammed heavily on the shield. Chu Luiyue's entire arm instantly went numb. The qi and blood in her body were in a mess, and she suddenly vomited blood. The warm, crimson blood fell on the black shield and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1508. Chu Luiyue did not see this scene. Mao Yao's attack was too ferocious. Her vision turned black, and she could not see anything. Her internal organs seemed to be squeezed together by an invisible force, and she did not know when they would explode. Pain. It was too painful. Chu Luiyue gritted her teeth, and there was a roaring sound in her ears. For a moment, her mind was in a mess. However, the last bit of reason she had left made her grip on the black shield tightly. She knew that this was her life-saving straw. The surroundings seemed to be quiet for a moment. Chu Luiyue did not care much. After she recovered a little, she quickly looked at her left arm. There were several cracks on the golden armor. On half of her arm, there were also several small wounds, and blood was flowing out. This was caused by the terrifying force that she had endured in an instant. The pure gold armor had helped to dissipate most of the force, but the remaining force was still not something that Chu Luiyue's body could withstand. Her bones seemed to be broken. Chu Luiyue gritted her teeth and quickly took out an elixir from her universe ring. At the same time, she switched to her other hand and switched to the red cloud sword. If it happened again, she might not be able to keep her arm. The thick smell of blood between her lips and teeth made Chu Luiyue feel a little suffocated and nauseous. She spat out a mouthful of blood, looked up, and said word by word, "I'll take the first move." "Senior Mao Yao, please." Mao Yao looked at her in shock and doubt. To be precise, he was looking at the black shield in front of her. No one knew better than him just how powerful that attack was. The legendary three-eyed eagle and the pure gold phoenix were easily shaken off one after another, and they had no power to fight back. Even if a part of the energy had been consumed, it was still easy to crush Shang Guanyu. She was just a middle stage, ninth stage. But now, not only was she not dead, she even had the strength to continue standing there. And she was asking for the second move. Mao Yao felt that it was ridiculous at first, and then he was deeply shocked and suspicious. There was clearly something wrong with that black shield. At first glance, it was just a slightly shabby and ordinary shield. It was completely black and dim. There were no special patterns on it, only the messy marks of swords and sabers. It seemed to have been left behind after a fierce battle. It seemed to be quite old, but Mao Yao stared at it for a while, but he still couldn't figure out anything specific. This made it feel a little uneasy. Although it was not a weapon refiner, it had seen countless treasures in the past 1,000 years, so it could definitely be considered to have good eyesight. However, it was unable to identify the origin of this black shield. After a brief moment of dead silence, the crowd fell into an uproar. Am I seeing things? Shang Guanyu actually took the first move of the Great Phoenix Dragon. Although she's injured, she's conscious and can speak clearly. She's definitely accepted the challenge. My God! Isn't she at the middle stage of the 9th step? Why is he so powerful? I think it's not that she's powerful, but that her trump card is more powerful. The legendary three-eyed eagle and the crimson gold heavenly phoenix helped to block a lot of the attack, so the attack didn't really land on her. Tisk! So jealous. Who do you think attacked her? Mao Yao. That's an important existence in the Great Phoenix Dragon race. If you or I were to take the attack, I'm afraid we would have been turned into ashes. I was just saying. Moreover, what I said is actually not wrong. I think the reason why Shang Guanyu was able to withstand this attack was largely due to the help of the two mythical beasts. And that black shield of hers didn't crack. I'm afraid it's not an ordinary item. No matter what, she managed to withstand the attack. The key is, what should we do with the remaining two moves? Anyone with eyes could see that the two mythological beasts were seriously injured and should not be able to fight anymore. Without their help, Shang Guanyu would probably. I didn't expect you to have such a treasure. No wonder you're so confident. Mao Yao said in a deep voice. It's a pity that you're only at the mid-stage of the 9th stage. You don't have divine power, and your origin power is suppressed by my god domain, so you can't use it. In your hands, you can only use 10 to 20% of its power. Mao Yao indeed felt that Chu Liuyue's black shield should not be underestimated. However, this did not have much of an impact on the final result. Even if the black shield could withstand its attack, Chu Liyue, who was holding the shield, didn't have enough strength to withstand the residual energy. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. Let's see how long you can be so arrogant without the help of others. After Mao Yao finished speaking, a dazzling light suddenly erupted from his body. Dragon armor kill. Swish. Swish. Several scales suddenly flew out at the same time. Streaks of light streaked across the sky and headed straight for Chu Liyue. It blotted out the sky and covered the earth. In an instant, it completely enveloped her figure. At a glance, the sky was filled with specks of purplish gold light. It was dazzling and magnificent. However, the murderous intent contained within it made people shrink back and tremble in fear. Wherever the scales passed, the space would shatter. The pressure was overwhelming. If one was hit by the sharp scales, a piece of flesh would be sliced off easily. Moreover, there were so many of them. It was tantamount to dismemberment. Everyone was shocked when they saw this. This time, Mao Yao was serious. Previously, Mao Yao had not taken Chu Lu as seriously and had just casually attacked her. Who knew that she would be able to withstand it? Mao Yao felt deeply humiliated. Hence, he had put in a lot of effort into this second attack. It's time to end this. Following Mao Yao's shout, Chu Liuyue's figure was completely surrounded by the scales that filled the sky. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1509. The black shield could block attacks from one direction, but it could not protect her from all directions. Hence, Mao Yao directly used this move. What he wanted was to directly take her life. This was the first time he had let his guard down and failed to finish her off. A second time, the same thing must not happen again. Mao Yao let out a deep dragon roar from his throat. His pair of dragon eyes stared fixedly at the cluster of light formed by the purple-gold scales. He could not wait to see the ending. The scales flew back and forth, entangling with each other and shuttling back and forth at an alarming speed. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. After all this, Sheng Guanyu, who was inside, would most likely be in grave danger. Mao Yao is determined to kill Sheng Guanyu this time. He wants Sheng Guanyu dead no matter what. I don't think she can survive the second move. Her two mythical beasts can't even take care of themselves and can't help her. What else can she do? In the end, she can't blame anyone for this. She used the great phoenix dragon's corpse to reconstruct the bodies of her mythical beasts. How bold must she be to do such a thing? Most importantly, she did it and even admitted to it so openly. Do you think he will let her off so easily? What else can she do? This matter will be exposed sooner or later. The longer she keeps it a secret, the more dangerous it will be. She might as well say it directly. I think Sheng Guanyu is just talented and has a fast breakthrough. She thinks too highly of herself. Does she really think that she can fight the great phoenix dragon head-on just because she knows some martial arts? Think about it. She has caused a lot of trouble for Lingxiao College recently. She is young and arrogant. She will eventually suffer. Everyone in Qingming Square was talking about all kinds of things. Mu Hongyu was so angry that her face turned red and her chest heaved violently. What do you know? She is not that kind of person. Her angry rebuke silenced the crowd. Quite a number of people looked at Mu Hongyu with different expressions. Finally, someone said, "If she isn't like that, why would she do all these things? Besides, it's useless to say all these now, right? Whether she can survive or not is up in the air." Mu Hongyu clenched her fists. These people, of course she can survive. A calm and indifferent voice suddenly sounded. Mu Hongyu was stunned, and the surrounding people also looked in the direction of the voice. The one who spoke was a tall and thin young man. He was dressed in a long green robe. His facial features were sparse, and his temperament was elegant. He had a scholarly air about him. "Lin Qifei? Are you speaking up for Sheng Guanyu?" someone asked. Lin Qifei smiled faintly. "I was only telling the truth. Not to mention that Rong Xiao and the others were here. They would never let anything happen to her. Even she herself would never do anything she wasn't confident in." "TSK, what truth? I think it won't be long before that Sheng Guanyu will, look." Before that person could finish his mocking words, he was suddenly interrupted. Everyone subconsciously looked up. The next moment, they were all shocked. In the sky, a crack suddenly appeared in the light ball formed by the purplish gold scales. A cluster of transparent flames suddenly emerged from the crack. In an instant, the transparent flames spread and covered the scales, devouring them. Then, everyone saw that the scales, which were originally very powerful, began to weaken at a speed visible to the naked eye. The dazzling light on the scales also quickly dimmed. That's Elder Bo Yen and the others were also shocked by the scene in front of them. Elder Wanjing suddenly thought of something and exclaimed in shock, could it be dash, crack? A crisp sound could be heard all of a sudden. Then, the crowd saw a piece of purple gold scale armor shatter. After being enveloped by the transparent flames, the scale's power was quickly devoured and became very brittle. Just a slight movement could shatter it. At this moment, all the noises in the room disappeared. Heaven and earth were silent. Mao Yao's eyes widened. His originally cold and indifferent eyes were now filled with disbelief. How could, boom? Following a loud explosion, the transparent flames crazily surged in all directions. The scales that were encircled together were so fragile that they could not withstand a single blow. Like a flood breaking through a dam, everything began to develop in an unpredictable direction. Everyone stared at the sky with their mouths agape. There, in the crazily surging transparent flames, stood a slender and straight figure. Her clothes and hair were fluttering in the wind. It was Chu Luiyue. Her face and body were stained with bloodstains, and the golden armor on her body was already in tatters. Her face was as pale as snow. Only a pair of black jade-like eyes, as deep as a cold lake, were surging with a shocking battle intent. She was obviously in a terrible state, but people could not help but respect and submit to her. Some people, even if they were covered in wounds, were still incomparably honorable. In front of her, a small transparent square cauldron was floating quietly. The terrifying transparent flames were obviously surging out from it. The heavenly square cauldron. Mao Yao exclaimed in shock. He did not know what had happened in Fangzhou City earlier. So when he suddenly saw it, he was naturally very surprised. Chu Liuyue's lips suddenly curled up into a wild and arrogant smile. Senior Mao Yao, to be honest, I have been waiting for this day for a long time. Finally, he could finally use this trump card in an open and above-board manner. Digression, the backstage was spammed for 10 minutes before it came out. 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1510. Mao Yao didn't expect Chu Luiyue to have such a sacred artifact on her. The heavenly square cauldron had been lost in the divine ruins world for thousands of years. Countless people had searched for it, but to no avail. He didn't expect it to be with her. Although Mao Yao didn't know much about the outside world, he knew Sheng Wanjing well. Sheng Wanjing might be powerful, but he was an outsider and didn't have an impressive background. Back then, when he had just made a name for himself in the divine ruins world, he had fought an earth-shattering battle with them. Since then, he had stayed in the primeval north region. Although Sheng Wanjing hadn't really died in the past 1,000 years, he had been trapped in the primeval north region without knowing anything. It was no different from being dead. Therefore, it was impossible for her to do anything for Sheng Guanyu. In other words, Sheng Guanyu was also an outsider. She was just a teenage girl with an ordinary background. Although she was talented, her strength wasn't top-notch. At the very least, she wasn't strong enough to do whatever she wanted in the divine ruins world. That was why Mao Yao didn't think much of her. At this moment, when he saw the black shield and the heavenly square cauldron, Mao Yao finally realized that he had underestimated Sheng Guanyu. When Elder Bo Yen and the others saw this scene, they were stunned and couldn't recover for a long time. Although they already knew that the heavenly square cauldron was with Chu Luiyue, this was the first time they saw it. It was one of the legendary 10 great sacred artifacts. It was a supreme treasure that countless cultivators vied for. It was indeed worthy of its reputation. It actually helped Chu Luiyue block this attack. With a thought, Chu Luiyue pulled the raging transparent flames back into the heavenly square cauldron. Even the scales were sucked into it. Mao Yao panicked. Sheng Guanyu. What are you trying to do? Chu Luiyue coughed lightly and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He smiled and said, "You are very smart. Don't you know what I want to do? Of course, I want to keep these scales. How dare you?" Mao Yao was so angry that his eyes turned red. Those scales were left behind from its previous metamorphosis, and they had an extraordinary meaning to it. If Chu Luiyue was sucked into the heavenly square cauldron, he would definitely be destroyed. Chu Luiyue paused in her actions. Even though her face was as pale as snow, there was still a smile on her lips. Earlier, you said that as long as I could withstand 3 of your attacks, you would let bygones be bygones. But you didn't say that I can't retaliate? Besides, this shouldn't be considered a counterattack. Wasn't she just going to keep these scales? What was the big deal? You! Sly! Mao Yao shouted. You are indeed as treacherous as Shengguan Jing. Long S's. Long TTS on of him, the of course. Why white. Go. Of the yiu is s. Yiu. Danger. Her sharp sixth sense made Chu Luiyue's mind ring. She retreated without hesitation. At the same time, the heavenly square cauldron in front of her started to spin. Oh no. Mao Yao is going to use his bloodline power. Seeing this scene, Shengguan Jing's heart was suddenly in his throat. Elder Bo Yan and the others also noticed that something was wrong. They immediately looked over. What does this mean? Shengguan Jing frowned and hurriedly explained. The great phoenix dragon is a primordial divine beast. His body contained an extremely powerful bloodline power. Once he mobilized it, he could easily turn the surrounding force of heaven and earth into his own control. As long as the heaven and earth force is inexhaustible, it can use it endlessly. Ordinary cultivators or magical beasts would need to guide the heaven and earth force into their bodies to become stronger, and then convert it into their own strength bit by bit. The stronger they were, the higher the efficiency of fusion and conversion, and the more they could store. That way, he would be able to display his full potential in battle. But the great phoenix dragon was a primordial divine beast. They already existed before the world was chaotic. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were born with this world. Therefore, their bloodline power was extremely heaven-defying. They could directly mobilize all the surrounding strength without any process. In the world, no matter how powerful a cultivator was, no matter how much strength they stored, how could they compare to a cheat like them? It's just that using the bloodline power like this has a huge impact on their body. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't do that. But now, Mao Yao was obviously blinded by anger at Chu Luiyue. He did such a thing on impulse. Originally, everyone thought that he could directly take Chu Luiyue's life with one move. But things did not go as they wished. Not only did Chu Luiyue not die, she even counterattacked slightly after taking the first 2 moves. Mao Yao was used to being arrogant. In his opinion, this matter had already made him lose face. That was why he had attacked so viciously without caring about anything else. He had made up his mind to kill Chu Luiyue. No, I have to stop it. As Shengguan Jing said, he raised his foot and was about to go over. However, he had only taken a few steps when he was repelled by an invisible force. This space was already controlled by Mao Yao. Outsiders could not barge in at all. Everyone was anxious, but any effort seemed especially pale and powerless at this moment. Rongxiu. Elder Wanjing gritted his teeth and looked at Rongxiu. However, he saw him with one hand behind his back and his eyes fixed ahead. His face was cold, but he had no intention of attacking. Rongxiu. Elder Wanjing was anxious. What time was it? Were they still going to wait and see? If this continued, it would really be too late. Boom! A bolt of heavenly lightning suddenly struck down. The elders looked around and saw that the mouth of the spring on Thousand Wine Mountain was almost completely covered in frost. Elder Bo Yan sucked in a cold breath. On one side was Chu Luiyue, and on the other side was the spring. This, without waiting for him to make a choice, Mao Yao had already attacked. My bloodline shines with the sun and moon. Break. The deep dragon roar seemed to come from a distant time and space. It was like thunder, shaking people's hearts and making them unconsciously feel reverence. The force in Chu Liuyue's body suddenly started to dissipate at a terrifying speed. At the same time, a heavy pressure went straight for her dantian, as if it was going to completely crush her core of essence. Digression, sorry, my big babies, my computer is broken. I found another one at the last minute, so I'm writing much slower. I'll continue after dinner. It's about 8:00. I'm sorry, everyone. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 15:11. Chu Luyue felt as if her muscles, bones, blood, and flesh were being crushed inch by inch. An indescribable pain swept through her entire body, causing her vision to turn black. She gritted her teeth and desperately tried to mobilize the force in her body to resist this sudden and terrifying attack. However, she was in the opponent's domain and was already being suppressed. She could not even mobilize half of the force in her body. Moreover, she had already used all her strength to withstand those two moves. At this moment, the force in her body had dried up, and she could not draw out even a little bit of force to deal with the situation in front of her. Chu Liuyue's body began to tremble slightly. For a moment, she almost had no strength to hold Scarlet Heaven's sword and the black shield. She was only relying on her last bit of willpower to stubbornly hold on. At this moment, a purplish gold blood bead suddenly flew out from between Mao Yao's brows. That blood bead danced in front of it and quickly condensed into a strange totem. It was the great phoenix dragon's totem. The totem shone brightly, holy, and magnificent. Chu Luyue only took a glance and felt a piercing pain in her eyes. That shocking pressure seemed to be able to materialize into a real sword and was incomparably sharp. Chu Luyue turned her face away slightly and shifted her gaze. More and more wounds began to rupture on her body, and the blood that flowed out continuously dyed her clothes. Between heaven and earth, there was an empty space and silence. However, this silent and oppressive atmosphere was almost maddening. In just a short while, Chu Luyue was already covered in blood. At some point, she felt a little itchy on her face, and she forcefully wiped it with the back of her hand. It was sticky and sweet. It was blood. The back of her hand was also covered in blood. The bright red color was glaring, and it stimulated Chu Liuyue's temples to crazily throb. The force in her dantian was also constantly flowing away. Only that water bead floated silently, as if it had solidified. This can't go on, Chu Luyue thought silently in her heart. The next moment, she raised her head and looked at Mao Yao again. The distance between them was not considered close. However, Mao Yao immediately noticed Chu Liuyue's gaze. It stared at Chu Luyue, expecting to see pleading and despair in his eyes. However, to its disappointment, Chu Liuyue's expression was incomparably calm. She no longer wiped away the more and more bloodstains that appeared on her face, even though it made her look particularly miserable. Amidst the ghastly dense blood red, only that pair of eyes was as dark as the night that couldn't be dispelled. However, in the depths of the night, there were shining stars that shone brightly. For some reason, Mao Yao's heart suddenly skipped a beat. How could a person who was on the verge of death have such a look in his eyes? A subtle sense of impatience surged up. He had to end the battle quickly. This thought quickly flashed through its mind. The next moment, Mao Yao raised his dragon head and roared into the sky. Roar! The surrounding heaven and earth force suddenly seemed to be controlled by an invisible hand. It quickly condensed into a transparent long whip that was faintly purple gold in color. It swung straight at Chu Luyue. Pa! The sound of air being torn apart was ear-piercing. The heavenly square cauldron was actually flung away by this whip. Chu Liuyue's chest shook, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her aura rapidly weakened. There was not much force left in her body. She could only barely maintain the connection with the heavenly square cauldron. However, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to mobilize its power. Oh no! The force in her body has been exhausted, and the surrounding heaven and earth force has been completely used by Mao Yao. If this goes on, I'm afraid. Sheng Wanjing's expression was tense. His heart seemed to be tightly clenched by something, and even breathing became difficult. If possible, he would rather suffer all this torture in place of Chu Luiyue. However, he had just awakened his divine body and rushed all the way to Lingshao College. His condition was not at its best. On the other hand, Mao Yao had recuperated for many years. His attack was naturally much stronger than his. Not to mention, Mao Yao had already activated his bloodline power. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for outsiders to interfere. The onlookers in the square fell into silence at this moment. Mu Hongyu's eyes were red. Lin Qifei slowly clenched his fists. Luo Shishir looked away with a mournful expression. There were also people who subconsciously looked at Rongxiu. Chu Luiyue was in a life and death crisis. Why hadn't he done anything yet? Rongxiu closed his eyes. Elder Wanzheng, who was standing at the side, was getting more and more anxious. However, just as he was about to speak, he suddenly saw a smear of gold appear in between Rongxiu's brows. A strange totem rapidly formed. Rongxiu's robe moved without wind. An indescribable aura suddenly spread out from his body. Elder Wanzheng was shocked and subconsciously took 2 steps back. The current Rongxiu seemed a little different. And there seemed to be great danger hidden in the unseen world. Rongxiu raised his hand. It was slender and fair with distinct knuckles. Swoosh! A cluster of golden flames suddenly appeared at his fingertips and leaped like an elf. A smear of black flashed past quickly. At this moment, the long whip had already cut through the air and hit Chu Luiyue's black shield fiercely. Boom! Chu Luiyue suffered a terrifying impact. The pure gold sacred armor instantly disintegrated. It transformed into countless golden fragments and flew in all directions. Her hand, which was holding the black shield tightly, instantly went numb. The next moment, her entire body was completely sent flying by this terrifying power. She fell straight down. Bam! Crack! Chu Luiyue actually fell into the almost frozen spring. The spring water overflowed and instantly swallowed her body. She disappeared in an instant. Everyone was stunned by this scene. After a moment of dead silence, dark clouds rolled in the sky, and countless Tianlei appeared in an instant. For a moment, the world shook. What's going on? Elder Bo Yen frowned and looked at the sky in bewilderment. Boom! A loud sound suddenly came from another direction. Elder Huafeng suddenly turned his head and muttered in shock, Pengmin Mountain. Is there a riot? Digression, a 6-year-old computer is really hard to serve. I think this time, I really have to say goodbye. After that, it will probably take a long time to get used to the new keyboard and input method. It's mentally tiring. Tomorrow at 12:00 mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 15:12. At the same time, on Mount Pengmin. On the top floor of the tower, Elder Meng, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at the door floating in front of him in shock. A hidden and powerful force was rapidly gathering. The faint but bright light outlined a strange pattern bit by bit. These specks of light gradually enveloped the entire door. Dong! 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 Inside the door, there seemed to be something crazily colliding. The lines broke out of the door. A vast and awe-inspiring aura instantly swept over. Elder Meng suddenly stood up. The girl is back? Who else could cause such a commotion other than that girl? He quickly turned around, ran to the window, and looked outside. What he saw immediately gave him a shock. Above the rolling mountains, the sky was dark and gloomy. Dark clouds rolled, and the wind howled. Bolts of heavenly lightning that resembled silver snakes were rapidly converging in the clouds. These Tianlei intertwined and swam, almost illuminating half the sky. That's Mount Thousand Wine? Elder Meng sucked in a breath of cold air. The strength of the barrier outside Mount Pengmin was not inferior to the barrier outside the academy. And because that door had been restless during this period, he had spent a lot of time and energy guarding it. It was also because of this that he did not notice what was happening outside. Now that he suddenly saw it, he was extremely shocked. Something happened at Mount Thousand Wine? But wasn't it fine before? Why did it suddenly, his gaze fixed, and he saw the huge purple-gold figure in the air. The great phoenix dragon. At this moment, Elder Meng's feelings could no longer be described as shock. He had only spent a little more effort on that door in the past few days. Why did so many things happen outside? Dong! The knocking on the door behind him became more and more intense. Elder Meng looked back and frowned. If that girl was really back, then opening the door should be the right thing to do. But now, he did not even see a shadow, and he was really uneasy. According to the agreement, when the girl left, she would personally return to the tower and take away what belonged to her. But now, above the floating door, in the center, a unique pattern was gradually gathering. Because they were a little far away, the commotion at Mount Pengmin did not attract the attention of the students on Qingming Square. However, Elder Huafeng and the others were already in a state of confusion. Only a few people knew what was hidden in Mount Pengmin. She had always been fine, so why did everything happen at the same time? Elder Wanzhang's figure moved, and he was about to head straight for the spring. I'll bring her out. Just how dangerous was the mouth of the spring? If he stayed there, he was afraid. Boom! A bolt of lightning struck down from the sky. It actually struck right in front of Elder Wanzhang. Elder Wanzhang was shocked and hurriedly retreated. At the same time, he set up a barrier. The violent power of heavenly thunder spread out in all directions. Elder Wanzhang's barrier shook violently. Of Elder of the barrier, in the blink of an eye. Calm! Elder Wanzhang retreated again, narrowly avoiding the attack. Even so, one of his sleeves was still directly torn apart by the terrifying power. Seeing this scene, many people were inwardly shocked. Tianlei's power is so strong. Elder Wanzhang is a true high god powerhouse. Even he couldn't withstand this heavenly lightning. It's enough to show how powerful it is. I'm afraid it's different from the Tianlei we attract when we cultivate or forge yuan instruments. It's different. Didn't you notice that Tianlei's color is different from normal Tianlei? It was unknown who said this sentence, but it immediately caused everyone to raise their heads and look over. Elder Bo Yen and the others looked up. When he took a look, he was stunned on the spot. Wait! That Tianlei's color is golden? It was daytime, but dark clouds gathered, and thunder rumbled. Heaven and earth were in chaos. Above Mount Thousand Wine, there was a vortex formed by clouds. The force of heaven and earth in the surroundings was sucked into it. Tianlei appeared in the depths of the vortex. It had turned into a sea of lightning. It was a dazzling silver that made it hard to open one's eyes. If one looked carefully, one would be able to see that in the depths of the sea of lightning, a wisp of brilliant gold would occasionally flash. However, this flash of gold was too inconspicuous. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't notice it at all. The legendary golden Tianlei. Who summoned the divine tribulation? Elder Bo Yan's eyes were a little dazed. When a cultivator tried to break through, if their level was high enough, they would trigger a phenomenon in heaven and earth and summon Tianlei. The more Tianlei that was summoned, the more powerful it was. It proved that the cultivator's talent was good, and their future was limitless. However, not every breakthrough could cause such a big commotion. Generally speaking, such a situation would only happen when a cultivator was preparing to break through to rank 7 or become a high god. She's a mid-rank 9, so she naturally didn't summon the divine tribulation, Elder Huafeng muttered in a low voice. Suddenly, his eyes widened in shock. She's going to break through to the high god realm? But from the middle stage of the 9th level to a true god-level powerhouse, there was still a gap of 2 levels. Peak rank 9 and a demigod. One had to know that when breaking through to the demigod realm, it wouldn't cause such a phenomenon. Just as he finished speaking, within the sea of lightning, several bolts of heavenly lightning struck down simultaneously. Their target was Chu Luiyue in the spring below. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 15:13. At this moment, Chu Luiyue only felt a bone-chilling cold all over her body. The cold air was so strong that for a moment, she even ignored the pain on her body. The cold spring water spread from all directions and swallowed her. She could clearly feel that every inch of her skin had been covered by the spring water. Vaguely, it was as if sharp and fine needles were crazily stabbing every part of her body. The piercing pain caused her to open her eyes. What entered her eyes was a clear blue. Was she, in the spring? Chu Luiyue thought of this and subconsciously raised her hand. A ripple of water flowed in front of her. She raised her head and looked up. The spring water was very clear, so she could clearly see the scene in the sky outside. Dark clouds were thick, and Tianlei was flickering. But, she was clearly in the spring water, so why didn't she feel uncomfortable at all? At this moment, her entire body was submerged in the water, but she felt no different from being outside. Only when the water flowed past her body would she be reminded that she was in a spring water. But soon, Chu Luiyue understood why. It was because the water in the spring was not real spring water. It was liquid condensed from incomparably pure energy. Chu Luiyue was a little shocked. In the past, she had been to Thousand Wine Mountain many times, and it was not that she had never come into close contact with it. But she had never realized that there was such a secret hidden inside. When she was outside, she did not see anything unusual, and the water flowing down seemed to be real water. Only when she was here did she realize that there was actually another mystery in the spring. Chu Luiyue looked down and was suddenly stunned. The spring was very shallow. From here, she could see the bottom directly. Around her were piles of mountain rocks, and their shapes were irregular and rugged. Upon closer inspection, there were many marks on them that seemed to have been left by some sharp weapon. Was it because of those Tianlei? Just as this thought flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind, a flash of silver lightning flashed past her eyes. The lightning bolt was very short and small, no bigger than the size of a palm. From Chu Luiyue's point of view, it looked like a silver fish swimming by quickly. The Tianlei quickly disappeared from the stone wall, leaving behind a shallow mark. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. He stretched out his hand and gently brushed it across the uneven stone wall. There were so many marks. Just how much Tianlei's power had they endured? Soon, a second and a third appeared. The Tianlei seemed to have toned down a lot in the mouth of the spring and was no longer as aggressive. And for some reason, it was as if they had grown eyes. When they passed by Chu Luiyue, they would deliberately avoid him. Chu Luiyue didn't notice it at first. It was only when she unintentionally stretched out her hand that the Tianlei suddenly took a detour. That was when she realized that something was wrong. Previously, Dumpling had devoured the Tianlei's power in this place and completed her bloodline awakening. Chu Luiyue surveyed her surroundings and realized that the number of lightning bolts here was indeed much less than when she came here in the past. However, the rock at the bottom was very flat. Chu Luiyue stared at it and vaguely felt that something was amiss. Logically speaking, there was no reason for the Tianlei to deliberately avoid the rock at the bottom. Why was that rock the only one that was different? However, this thought only flashed through her mind and was quickly ignored by her. That was because she realized that the wounds on her body were rapidly healing. Immersed in this gentle and generous energy, her originally battered and exhausted body, which was riddled with scars, was rapidly recovering. Her injuries were also recovering at an astonishing speed. In a short while, Chu Luiyue saw that the fine wounds on her arms had all scabbed over and turned a light pink. There was also a portion of energy that had entered her body and was slowly nourishing her limbs and bones. Chu Luiyue's aura was gradually recovering. A faint ripple came from her dantian. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. It was the Black Pyramid. At this moment, the water around her suddenly surged violently. She seemed to have sensed something and looked up. Several bolts of heavenly lightning were flying down from the sky, directly striking down at her. Why is she suddenly breaking through to the god realm? Seeing this, Elder Bo Yen finally couldn't help but exclaim. Not to mention that trying to break through to the god realm from the middle stage of rank 9 was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Even if Shang Guanyu really had the ability to do so, with her current physical condition, she was probably doomed. She had just taken 3 of Mao Yao's attacks, and her force was almost depleted. She was covered in injuries. In the blink of an eye, she had to face this sudden god tribulation. If it were him, he wouldn't be able to bear it either. He couldn't help but look at Elder Wanzheng. Wanzheng, she's your disciple. Why didn't you know about this before? Elder Wanzheng's expression was also complicated. He was also very worried. After all, that was his most beloved disciple. He had yet to recover from the shock of his disciple being a girl, and in the blink of an eye, he encountered such a thing again. Who could he find to reason with? How could I know about this in advance? Elder Wanzheng gritted his teeth and shouted. She usually only followed me to cultivate as a celestial physician. Who knew that she, enough. Stop quarreling. Elder Huafeng almost cursed out loud. What time is it now? The most important thing is to think about how to save that girl's life. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone quieted down. Of course, they didn't want anything to happen to her. Even if they were basically sure that the sudden eruption of the spring was indeed related to her. But that was another matter. Ever since this child entered the academy, she had been valued and liked by them. Even if she had caused a lot of trouble, they really didn't have the heart to punish her ruthlessly. Of course, the main reason was that those punishments didn't seem to be effective on her. Now, even if they wanted to punish her, they had to wait for her to come back safely. How do we save her? Shang Guanjing stood alone at the side. There was no expression on his face. Only his eyes were fixed on the spring. Previously, it was Mao Yao who used the power of his bloodline. Now, it was Yu who summoned the god tribulation. In these two situations, outsiders couldn't interfere. Even taking a step closer was as difficult as ascending to the sky. If it was Tianlei who was summoned during the refinement of the Yuan instrument, he might be able to step forward and help her block a little. But this was the god tribulation that was summoned when a cultivator broke through to the god realm. No one could help her. Whether she lived or died, it was all up to her. Shang Guanjing clenched his fists tightly and slowly exhaled. You must be well, boom. The first bolt of lightning had already descended from the sky and accurately struck the mouth of the spring. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 15-14. You overestimate yourself. Mao Yao could not help but sneer in the air. Some were shocked, and some were surprised. It did not hesitate to use the power of its bloodline to kill Shang Guanyu. However, it did not expect her to summon the divine tribulation as soon as it made its move. Mao Yao's eyes flashed coldly as he looked at the terrifying commotion in the sky. No matter how powerful it was, it still had to crawl under the sky. Now that it could not resist the divine tribulation, it could only watch from the side. Even the heaven and earth origin force that was originally under its control had already broken free from its restraints and gathered towards the heavenly lightning. However, it did not matter. The terrifying power of the divine tribulation could only be stronger than it. Shang Guanyu was just an arrow at the end of its flight. It could not even survive the first Tianlei, let alone the golden divine tribulation. Mao Yao was in a good mood when he thought of this. After admiring the expressions of Sheng Guanjing and the others for a while, he began to wait leisurely. Although it had only calculated half of the third move, as long as the result was what it wanted, nothing else mattered. The only thing that made it feel strange was Rongxiu. Since a while ago, the others had been worried about Sheng Guanyu. Sheng Guanjing and the others could not wait to bear it for her. Only Rongxiu remained standing in the same spot. At this moment, his eyes were still closed. The golden flame burning on his fingertip was still dancing and shining brightly. It seemed to be no different from before. The faint glow shone on Rongxiu's face, making it half bright and half dark. His handsome and devilish face was completely calm. Mao Ya watched for a while. He could not figure it out, so he looked away. Rongxiu floated quietly in the air as if he was frozen. A gust of wind rose and swept up his clothes, making them flutter loudly. A black light was faintly discernible in the flame on his fingertip. Boom! The first Tianlei, wrapped in a shocking aura, struck the mouth of the spring. Spring water splashed everywhere. Between heaven and earth, there was a sudden silence. Almost everyone's eyes were focused on this place. On the Qingming Square, all sorts of discussions gradually sounded. Heavens! If this Tianlei falls, even if he doesn't die, he'll be crippled, right? She was already on the verge of death after suffering such serious injuries. How could she have withstood this attack? I don't think so either. What a pity, she's so talented. He had even contracted 2 divine beasts. If not for today's accident, his future would be limitless. Sigh. But why did she suddenly summon the divine tribulation? Could it be that he wanted to take a gamble? After all, if she can break through to the divine level, she might be able to completely receive Mao Yao's third move. She's only at the middle stage of the 9th stage. If he was at the peak of the 9th stage, it would be understandable. But how could he make such a huge leap and become a high god? Even a 3-year-old knows that this is absolutely impossible. But it's useless even at the peak of the 9th step. The great phoenix dragon used the power of its bloodline and controlled the origin power of heaven and earth. Unless you can break through and become a true divine level expert, all your efforts will be futile. Maybe he was really forced into a corner. Everyone had different opinions, but they all had the same understanding of the outcome. Sheng Guanyu was really finished this time. Tianlei fell into the spring. After the turbulent impact, it gradually calmed down. Looking at the calm surface of the water, Elder Bo Yen and the others looked at each other. Where was she? Regardless of whether she was injured or, why was there no reaction at all? At first glance, it was as if the Tianlei had been swallowed by the spring. Elder Wanzheng hurriedly took out his jade pendant and glanced at it. Back then, he had asked Chu Luyue to leave a trace of her aura in this jade pendant. It was supposed to be convenient for them to contact each other, but now it was the only way he could confirm whether she was alive or not. Sensing that the trace of her aura was still there, Elder Wanzheng suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and continued to wait. But this idle time did not last long. This was because the second bolt of heavenly lightning was about to strike. After that, it was the third. The fourth. Until, several of them struck at the same time. When one looked at it from afar, it practically caused one to wonder exactly how such a tiny spring was able to receive so many bolts of heavenly lightning and still not collapse. Marks were left on the rocks at the edge of the spring, but it did not collapse. On the contrary, the surrounding ground seemed to be unable to withstand the concentrated bombardment of this terrifying power, and cracks appeared on it. It was like a spider web, and it was a ghastly sight. Sheng Guanjing's heart ached. At a certain moment, he could not hold it in anymore and looked up. The sea of lightning in the sky was still dazzling, and the number of Tianlei did not seem to decrease at all. They had fallen behind by so much earlier. Sheng Guanjing could faintly smell the rusty stench between his lips and teeth. If it were any other time, Chu Luyue was a normal demigod trying to break through to the high god level and summoning such a shocking god tribulation, he would be wild with joy. Because this meant that she had unlimited potential on the path of cultivation. Especially when it was a golden god tribulation. He had roamed the world for many years, but he had only heard of its existence in rumors. Those who could summon a golden god tribulation were all top geniuses in the world. But now, she was only a middle stage rank 9. With the passage of time, the noisy discussions gradually disappeared. Countless bolts of heavenly lightning fell, but there was no movement at all in the spring. What this meant was self-evident. Mao Yao snickered. Shangguan Jing, it seems that today, you're going to send your young, plop. Before he could finish his sentence, a figure suddenly dashed out of the spring. Digression, 6 p.m. mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.